Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Debate Club, a platform where we engage in healthy debates and discussions. The debate topic for the week is increased individuality will lead to societal degradation. Agree or disagree? Individuality refers to the quality or character of a particular person that distinguishes them from others of the same kind, especially when strongly marked. It emphasizes personal autonomy, self expression, and independence. Individuality promotes personal freedom and self reliance, allowing people to pursue their own paths and make choices that best suit them. Diverse perspectives and unique ideas can drive societal progress and problem solving. Individualism can foster economic growth by encouraging entrepreneurship and competition. However, it can also lead to societal fragmentation and a weakening of community bonds. A focus on individual success can worsen social inequalities, as those with more resources and opportunities are better positioned to succeed in the greater society. The pressure to succeed individually can also lead to stress, anxiety, and other mental health issues. While individuality can promote personal freedom, innovation, and economic growth, it can also contribute to societal fragmentation, inequality, and mental health challenges. A balanced approach that values both individual autonomy and community cohesion may be necessary to address these issues effectively. With that context in place, I now declare the floor open for debate. To be able to speak, you guys need to use the reaction button to raise your hand, and in that order, you will be given a chance to speak. Before we begin the debate, I would also like to tell you guys that participants who may not have had a chance to speak often in the session will be allowed to speak prior to those who may have gotten a chance to speak earlier. This is to ensure that everybody has a fair opportunity to express their opinion because those are the values that we follow as a part of the debate club. Thank you. People who want to speak can now begin raising their hands. All right, Samarth.
One of the effects of this increased individuality is definitely social fragmentation. And what this social fragmentation, it is due largely to the erosion of the traditional values. So when the individuality in a society, these kinds of ideas related to the counterculture and focusing on things that would enhance personal freedom and growth and creating a social condition conducive to this individual freedom, those take predominance in society. That will be at the expense of what is good for the larger society. That will be the expense of weakening the bonds among members of the society. So you can directly see that there is a causation between this increased individuality and social fragmentation. And what the social fragmentation does is it has a disproportionately bad effect on the lower classes of the society. All classes of the society will be negatively affected by the social fragmentation, but this effects will be disproportionately borne by the lower social classes. One example might be how, due to the increasing prevalence of the toxic households, toxic and abusive households, people belonging to the lower classes, they might not be able to escape that environment because they might not be able to afford a new house. And also the increasing cases of addiction, which is a direct consequence of this increased social fragmentation. Poor people will not be able to afford these de-addiction treatments and the psychiatric treatments to overcome them. There will come a situation where all of the welfare policies that are implemented in the society for the benefit of the poor people to make them come out of the poverty, such welfare policies will become ineffective because one of the prerequisites for such welfare policies to be effective on the poor people in society is that the poor people must have like a strong social backing among them, and the community solidarity, it must be more. But when you take away prerequisite, uh, this prerequisite of communal solidarity, then all of the uh, welfare measures in the world, those will not be able to uplift the poor people from their situation. So they will be trapped in a cycle of perpetual poverty from which they cannot escape. Yeah, so this is one of the points that I wanted to make regarding this increased individuality.
Thank you so much, Samarth. Great points. So, Samarth is of the opinion that increased individuality will lead to societal fragmentation, which will most negatively affect the lower classes of the society. Thank you so much, Samarth. Next up is Prince.
So I personally believe that rising level of individualism will not lead to societal degradation. Because how it is so? What is a society or a state if not individual writ large? Before we see the demonic reflections or demonic things that individualism can cause, first let's see what does individualism seek. Individualism seeks simply living in peace and harmony with himself and others. If a person with such a soul is born, then he is a just individual, and a just individual will lead to a just state or a society. Additionally, too much emphasis on society and not on individualism is an injustice to our forefathers, because it is a society that was created to serve the individuals and not the other way around. If increasing individualism is for the sake of argument, causing societal degradation, then it's the society that needs to adopt and not the individuals. We have seen the examples of USSR, where we saw a total ignorance of individualism and an overemphasis on the societal things, and a huge emphasis on communism. There, at the end, the society as a whole was seen in decline, and ultimately the state collapsed. As we cannot seek goodwill of the society by suppressing the autonomy of individual, and it is simply not just for the individual as well. Additionally, if someone values its intrinsic worth, known as individualism, then if that leads to societal degradation, then we as a society need to rethink about how our society is. And the question should be how an overarching society is killing the uniqueness in the society and the what can we say, uh, individual supremacy that can be created by eventual upskilling. So yeah, that's it from me.
Great points, Prince. So Prince, as Prince told us that society was made to serve the interests of the individual and not vice versa. And of course, like society is just a group of individuals, and if greater emphasis on individualism is leading to a degradation of society, then we need to rethink what we are doing or where we are heading as a society. Thank you so much, Prince. Raghav, I'll let you speak next.
Thank you. So interesting points by both Samarth and Prince. So I want to bring the attention to how to frame this discussion. First of all, we are not talking about capitalism versus communism or something like that. No, we are talking about emphasis on individual priorities versus emphasizing the needs of a society, or the image of the society, or the overall requirements of the society. So there's always going to be like a balance, right? There has to be, it's like one is top down, the other is bottom up. So individualism is more like a bottom up approach, where you're prioritizing the needs of the individual, and the society has to be framed and structured towards how individuals who are free and who are able to exercise their freedom are wanting the society to be. On the other hand, where you have like things like like a more communal mindset where there is a, for example, if you take a tribe and their tribe has a certain reputation, and in a tribe like that you would not have individualism, because like every member of the tribe is meant to uphold the integrity of the tribe. They're meant to uphold the honor of the tribe, and they're meant to adjust according to the needs of the tribe. Maybe they, for example, I'll give you an example of like a real incident that happened. There was a tribe in some Polynesian islands or somewhere, some island where there is this uncontacted tribe, and apparently there was a bunch of tourists who went there, and one of the women of the tribe gets impregnated by one of these men, and she now has a baby, half white, half black baby, and the tribe chooses to abort the baby because they do not want the bloodline to be tainted. Okay, if in a society like that, right, the woman was adamant that she wants to keep the baby because like it's made of, like as a mother she has the desire to let the baby live because it's her baby, right? But eventually the baby was aborted. So this is the kind of dynamic that plays between a society that is individualistic versus a society that is more working towards the collective. Because in that instance, the decision that was made was basically that we need to uphold the integrity of the tribe. Either you do what benefits the tribe, what keeps us pure, or you are no longer the part of the tribe, something like that. So this is the kind of dynamic that also plays in larger societies. For example, in a country like India, I think there is a mix of these things. I think in more urban areas we have a more individualistic mindset, but in more rural areas there is obviously this like caste collective, and we're all trying to uphold to the integrity of the greater group. So if it was left to me, I would definitely prefer a more individualistic society, because like as Prince said, society is composed of individuals, and if you allow individuals to excel and to serve themselves and evolve out of their choices and personal freedom, you will inevitably end up with a society that is filled with more evolved individuals, and they will inevitably contribute to the society because they will intrinsically understand that unless they contribute to the society, they will not live in a society that is good for them. So that is my bottom line.
Thank you so much, Raghav. Great points. So, I mean, I personally really appreciated the point where you talked about like personal freedom and autonomy and how it leads to evolution of human beings and the way they think, the way they act, or the way they perceive things. And that will inevitably lead to a better society because, again, society is just a group of individuals, right? So, thank you so much for your points. Next up is Suri.
Thank you, Rose. Actually, this is a very interesting topic, and I like the points that everybody raised earlier. Uh, Actually, I'm struggling to figure out what to put right, but this is what comes to my mind at this point of time. So, I think societal degradation is a norm because, well, society, as somebody did point out, is like for a group of people to live harmoniously and all. And over time, the idea that is prevalent ages. So it degrades and a new value and a new societal system forms. To bolster the point that I'm trying to make, let's take an example like, initially everything was much more uh, tribal, right? So I think as Rago pointed out, like, in this example, tribes are strong, so everything is focused towards more tribal. But like and that was more like, global norm if you go few thousand years back, except for major cities. Now, over time, that evolved, and now we have like more of nation. So the strong sense of nationalism that comes up, it is because the tribal thought process is a little bit broken, right? If everything is much more tribal or local or village focused, people would not be so much concerned about the other villages or other regions, which basically does not allow us to be more focused toward a concept like a nation, right? And similarly, if you're like very, very focused towards your nation, you would not be able to consider something like, global good, because you want to just make sure your nation prevails. So I think this is just part of the ecosystem where individualism individualism always rises once in a while to kind of is a side effect of society not able to cope up with the uh, norms of the or the needs of the people, right? So whenever that happens, mostly individualism will rise, and then the societal norms that pre-exist would become not so good in some people's view. Some people like the societal norms because it does carry some value as well. So that is where over time the breakdown happens and the new system comes in. And there are myriad number of examples spread throughout the history where there was an old system that everybody liked, but over time new things were introduced, and then things started struggling, and then it was mostly individuals, right? And who wanted more individualism, like they wanted more choices to be made on their own. And there are like a lot of examples even in the romantic culture. If you see like Romeo and Juliet or any other story, like if you'll see, a lot of people are very aligned that this should remain in the area, versus those peoples are thinking like outside, and that's why we kind of romanticize that and kind of well, I think I'm like kind of breaking down my argument in not the most fine way. So I think that's my point, right? I think it's just a need of the hour, and societal degradation is bound to happen. And one of the mechanisms that assists is individualism, and that basically leads to a different society that might be much more needed as per the time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suri. That was a great argument. Of course, the only thing that is constant in any society is change, and norms are there to be broken because as time goes on, rightly said that we need change, and it is individuals who desire that change. So, with time, I think everything needs to change to for it to be better, for it to be more evolved, right? So, thank you so much. Great argument. Next up is Venkat.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, Venkat.
So, my personal preference always is to come down on the side of individual rights. And I do agree with Prince that society exists to serve the individual and not the other way around. But having said that, one cannot dispense with social values entirely. I mean, if that's the way that this kind of thinking goes, that individual rights are everything and social values count for nothing, uh, I don't think society is sustainable that way. Because in the long run, you do need some common set of values that you can commit to and preserve. Now, the problem that faces societies like ours is that many of those common social values are inherited from the remote past, and many of them are frankly no longer acceptable in the modern age. Right? For instance, there are multiple societies within India, where there's expectation there's expectation of dowry that should be given by the parents of the bride to the parents of the bridegroom. And that we know that it's harmful. The law outlaws it. The law basically says that it is illegal, and yet it persists purely due to social pressure. And one presumes social commitment on the part of the parties involved. One of my friends who comes from a part of the country where heavy dowries are given, he was personally opposed to it as a matter of principle. And when his parents approached, various parties for a marriage alliance, they made it clear that their son did not want dowry. The effect of that was that the parents of the prospective bride started looking at them with a lot of suspicion. They jumped to the conclusion that if he did not want dowry, there must be something wrong with him that he's trying to conceal, and that this is basically a ruse to basically overcome his problem, right? To get them to ignore his problem. And so now this is a society where this is a deeply flawed society, right? Where someone who has good principles is unable to make progress, is unable to change society's values, even though he's doing it for all the right reasons, and even though he's standing up for a principle that that we all, at least officially, are supposed to believe in. So I think the answer to this is not necessarily increasing individualism. That could be part of the answer, but also I think that as we move, further and further into the modern era, we need to our own society to change and recommit ourselves to better values. First, to evolve better values, and to recommit ourselves to those values, so that modern-minded people, people with a developed sense of morality, can actually believe in those values, can commit themselves to that, and we can rebuild our society based on those new shared values. So I think that that is what is really required, not a fragmentation of society into a bunch of individuals with no shared beliefs. And I don't think we should, continue to commit ourselves to the harmful beliefs that we have inherited from the past. The answer really, I think, is to evolve new values, new codes of ethics that all of us can believe in and commit ourselves to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venkat. I believe Venkat rightly pointed out with the example of dowry in our country. So our values are pretty old and may not align with what the modern society is heading towards, while at the same time, increased individualism or overly emphasized individualism may not be the answer to that value problem. So it is better that we evolve with new values which are more aligned to the present day. Thank you so much, Venkat. Next up, Ram, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Sorry, I didn't hear that you said my name. Sorry. So my point is, as someone who have always lived as an individual, who was helped by my parents to take my own decisions and face my own consequences, I would be a major hypocrite if I said I would prefer a society rather than an individual. But that is what I would be saying, because in my last year, I have realized the complete shift in my perspective on this topic, especially. I have always been an individual, but I will tell you some points what made me think society is better as a whole, but I will also tell you its shortcomings and what exactly needs to be, uh, you know, done in order to make societies greater than an individual. So yes, both have their pros and cons. So as an individual, I've always you can always focus on the short-term success. It's always efficient than a society. You can live at your own terms, like examples been said in previously about abortion and dowry. That those won't exist in an individualistic society. And but as a society, it's not efficient as individual, but it's always more foolproof. So societies are built in a way that it was always built so that the strongest and the weakest doesn't have too much difference between them. And there is a good example of wolves who always run in a pack. So they will always travel such that the oldest wolves go at the ahead of the pack, so that the rest of the young wolves can go at the oldest wolf's pace. So that if they are at the behind, they'll be left alone, right? So that's a great example of a good society which has a good leadership, in interests of all the individuals. And in society there will always be backing. So you see a lot of rise of depression and alone people in the current society, and the answer to that is increased individuality. But yeah, there has always been great advantages because of individualism. But apart from that, a society with a good leadership, it will always be greater than any individual. You can see great examples of great empires built, like Roman Empire or many great Indian kingdoms also. You can see those examples where a good leadership, a leadership which changes according to the times. If we stick to the societal norms of 1900s, that was not a good example, like we saw. So a great empire with a good leadership which changes according to time will always be greater than any individual. And if we always stick to the individuals, let's say, uh, who would be the soldiers in the time of war, who would be the leaders in the time of crisis. So I'm backing the society over individual, given that a good leadership which changes according to time is at the helm. That's my point. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ram. So, Ram is of the opinion that individualism may be of benefit in the short term, but in the long term, it is better to put greater emphasis on society as a whole, because good leadership in society ultimately will lead to a better society and more evolved people and a successful society. Next up will be Samarth.
Right. I heard the definition before that. What is society but an aggregation of individuals? I would agree to that definition, but I would qualify it with the statement that society is an individual, is an aggregation of individuals that shares some common ethos. And without this common ethos, uh, being shared by all members of the society, it will just be like an anarchic situation where each individual will be out to himself. So even in the kind of society that some of the speakers they would like to envision, the kind of society where the individual freedom is maximized and the individual expression is allowed to flourish. Even for such an society to come into existence, all of the individuals in that society, they have to share some common ethos. They have to share the common ethos that the in the pursuit of the individual expression, the liberty of another individual that isn't harmed. See, so already the speakers who are arguing for such an society where the individual flourishing can happen, they already have in mind some kind of shared ethos that all members of the society they share. So this fact, that all members of society they got to share a common interest. This is like inescapable, and for any functioning society, for the society to not like completely collapse into anarchy, this is like a prerequisite condition. So now the question doesn't become like whether there is a common ethos is necessary or not, but the question becomes like to what extent the common ethos must be there. Should the common ethos should be there to such an extent that all kinds of personal expressions and individual flourishing it is like restricted, and all people they'll become like you know carbon copies of one another? Should we strive for such a state? Well, I don't think anybody like is arguing for such a society to come into existence. Rather, what even the most ardent advocates of a communal society. I'm not saying communist society. I'm saying like a society where the communal aspects are emphasized. Even the most ardent advocates of such an society, what they're arguing for is that this common ethos should be large. The common ethos shared by all members of the society, it should not be confined to just one idea, but it should be comprised of a shared set of a culture that regulates the most important questions of life. So this shared sets of culture, it should very much regulate the important aspects of life, so that people do not squabble about each and everything, each and every like important questions related to life and what the fundamental values are, what the most important values are in life. People do not squabble about this one too much. And even in the most individualistic societies today, like we might say today that USA is one of the most individualistic societies. But if you look at this history of USA from its beginning to the present day, it has undergone a remarkable evolution. Uh, in the beginning of in the founding of the USA, the founders clearly stated that they're not constructing a society where they are just accepting for the individual to exercise his liberty at will. They said that we are founding a society where the individual can exercise his liberty in the pursuit of a common goal. right? But that message of sharing a common goal, shared values, and a common culture, sharing all of these in common, and then each individual, slightly, modifying their goals to fulfill his own individuality as well as working towards the common good. That is what they had envisioned. Each will be like working towards his own goal, but that will be in the larger context of uplifting the society. Well, that message of the founding fathers of America, it has been forwarded today to a situation where like each individual is pursuing his own interest at the expense of the larger society. So this is like harmful to the American society as well as any other society that can ever exist on Earth. Yeah, so these are the points that I wanted to make.
Thank you so much. So essentially, I think Samarth is trying to tell us that we need a common ethos for a society to be properly functioning. If not, it may collapse into an anarchy. I think he also posed a question that the question is, to what extent should such an ethos be pursued? I think we can take it into the unmoderated discussion part of this session if everybody agrees to that. Anyways, so next up, I'll let Akash go ahead.
Uh, Ma'am, just so that you know, like, am I audible? I'm not very sure about my microphone.
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. So everyone has put a really very nuanced conversation till now. Like, I really am very intrigued by various points put forward. But the most important point that struck with me is that the argument that society was created for individual well-being. I believe, yeah, that is true fact. But as Samad rightly put forward, it's not just about the individual; it's also about the shared ethos and or the foundational axioms which we share with each other, and the pursuit of which basically allows us to come together and form a society. And if we look into the human history as well, as many of the historians will rightly point out, that it was like that aspiration to achieve a shared goal which allowed us to settle at one place, which compelled us to essentially, it was religious, it was mythical, of course. It was in the case of Göbekli Tepe, I'm talking about in Turkey, that brought people together and which essentially compelled them to settle at one place. And it was that moral axiom and which laid the foundation for society to thrive. Obviously, it was very hard in the initial run because as we were hunter-gatherers, and it was not very good for our diet. It was not very healthy for our diet to stay at one place and cultivate. And still people went on with it just for the idea of achieving that shared value, which was God in that case, or some mythical ideas in this case. But I their individual aspiration or individual impulse to maybe steal and maybe kill other people to get rather gather loot to achieve some mythical goals or just some goals, and they all agree to it. That was essentially laid the foundations of society as we know it. And so I believe that's a very good point to note, because society ultimately creates an environment which allows the individualism to thrive. And the reason why individualism as we know it is thriving so much is not because individualism is intrinsically good, because it is because of the strong societal institutions which have been built over all these years, which is basically laying the groundwork for the individual enterprise to flourish. But I do believe that it has the limit. It has a limit up to the fact that once the core values of these foundations are questioned, and it is being questioned, I believe, to some degree, and once these core values that we all used to believe are being questioned, an anarchy will ensue, which will not allow this individualism to flourish in a safe and sound manner as it used to. So I believe, I also want to put forward this Marxist argument that I read about this as well, that the Marx always says, like, economic system determines the social superstructure that we live in. live in. So basically, he's saying during the feudal system, since agriculture was very inefficient, we need large number of people. So the king or the bourgeois class promoted an economic system where joint family was necessary. And with the advent of industrial capitalism, mobility was required. So nuclear family became the trend. And with this, the modern Marxist points out this, that they say the post-industrial capitalism, what we are having right now, even the nuclear family is broken down to have individualistic focus to enhance consumerism, to enhance selfish interests, because that's what fuels capitalism. The modern capitalism is based on overconsumption and and individualistic preference over collectivist goals. So I believe this individualism that is being glorified so much these days lately also contributes to major societal problems like social inequities, climate change. Of course, it is the environment degradation is the direct consequences of we losing our common communalistic, or what do we say, or the common communitarian sentiments that we had for our village or for our tribe or for our society. And it's also resulted in the breaking down of various important social institutions like marriage and family, because people are increasingly being disaffected by the notion of settling down and having kids and having family, because it somehow they believe that it somehow traps them and they are not able to fulfill life's enjoyment that life has to offer, which is nothing but basic capitalist pleasures that these capitalism has to offer. And I believe this breakdown of important social institutions like family has deprived people of major societal security net, which was earlier available to people. And that is what driving the loneliness and depression and mental health problem crisis that we are facing right now. So I'm not I'm not fundamentally against the idea, but I fundamentally believe that individualism can only thrive in a strong axiomatic foundation, strong moral foundation. For most part of the history, it was God. Now, for our country, we have anything. It is patriotism. It is nationalism. Nationalism has become the new religion. I believe individualism. Someone said that to what degree is that individualism should be allowed to flourish? I believe that degree is when it directly challenges the moral axiom that we built, or the foundation that upon which we built our society. For us, I believe it's our constitution. It's our constitution morality. For US, I believe it was God. I believe their founding fathers were even though they were very emphasis on secular ideas, but they had very good emphasis on God as an entity, and it was their idea of religion or Christianity which basically laid the foundation of the American society. And the American society increasingly become non-Christian or non-religious. This moral axiom or moral foundation is being challenged. That's why I believe the American society is in such a crisis right now, and everything is going anarchist in the route, I would say, in US. So I believe that's what I say. The cusp of my argument is individualism is good, but it's not as important or as good as societal norms or societal foundation. And individualism should always take a backseat of societal axioms. Sorry, I took a bit long, but that's my argument.
Thank you, Akash. Great argument right there. Next up, I'll let Tanmay go ahead. Tanmay, are you there?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Tanmay.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. I would agree with the topic that increased individuality will lead to societal degradation, because I believe that being individual or being lonely, it's just like a blind fish swimming in a dark ocean. So you don't have any direction, you don't have any fixed goal. Also, if you are far from your family and becoming individual, you don't get those moral values. Who will teach you all those values? Who will show you the right path? Also, like when you go on a wrong path or you are distracted from your goal or your aim, who will uh, who will remind you that that's not your goal, you're on the wrong path? So I feel that increased individuality will lead to these all consequences, and lack of moral values will like destroy your whole life, and you can go on a wrong path. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanmay. Next up will be Prince.
Oh, sorry, I was not able to hear. So yeah, I would agree with all of my previous speakers on the topic of balance, that there needs to be a specific balance established between individualism and the society. Now, I don't think anyone is advocating for doing away with the societal values. In the contrary, individualism would lead to individual excellence, and that might itself, lead to a societal evolution. Why I say that is, society is always inward looking. So, how are we going to reach this point of social evolution, or how are we going to have an age of renaissance? In this age of multiculturalism, where multiple cultures are assimilated into a same geographical entity, this could lead to several non so pleasant instances. Uh, some of the historical perspective of why rising level of individualism, on the contrary, led to societal evolution could be of Raja Ram Mohan Roy or Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. They led to huge societal upgradation, whether it be the abolition of sati or widow remarriage, and the certain evolution in the Muslim society by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. So I do agree that there needs to be a societal common established in the society, but this societal common should be evolving continuously, and that evolution can only be brought by a rising level of individualism. Additionally, individualism does not seek individualism versus society. For individualism, it has never been like that. It has always seen a way. Individualism has always seen individuality as a way to, kind of enrich the society. Uh, there is, if let's say, not hurting anyone's opinion, if society is given the utmost priority and individualism is kept aside, then that would lead to too much average people. And we have seen in several instances that too much societal things had led to an appreciation of this mediocrity. Additionally, great points put forth by Mr. Akash. I would just like to add a few points that society was actually made for individualism. If we look at the social contract theory of Rousseau, that people gave away their natural rights and created state for some responsibility for a better order and stability in the society. Hence, proving the fact that society was made to serve and assist the individual. It is also seen in the theories of Mr. J.S. Mill and Locke, I guess. It was John Locke. Last but definitely not the least, individualism, according to me, what people have said that could lead to mental issues. No, mental issues are a perfectly separate part of thing. We cannot say that rising level of individualism will lead to mental issues, or rising level of societal, this thing will lead to physical issues. Even in Atharvaved, we can see mentions of mental illness, where it is written that mental illness may result from divine curses. Now, I'm not going into the practicality of it, that how true is it, but we can see some brief description of schizophrenia in the Atharvaved as well. Proving the fact that mental illness is not something new in the Indian society. It has existed for long ago before this as well. So the crux is basically that yes, individualism and society should move side by side, and individualism always seeks to achieve excellence and resonate that excellence into the whole society. Yeah.
Crisp argument, Prince. Thank you so much for your input. Next up will be Gagan.
Yes, thank you, Rose, for handing over. So today's topic, I would like to take the stand with the topic, which is increased individuality would lead to degradation of society over the period of time. So I would say I would clearly stand with the topic and support the statement provided here. So in order to understand that better, I would like to first ask each of us present here to understand what individuality is. So, according to dictionary.com, the definition of individuality, one of the definitions would be a simple meaning would be distinguished, and one of the common definitions would be interest of one individual distinguished from the rest of the community. So that should be suffice for us to make note of the point that if we are embracing individuality, we are trying to distinguish as an individual from the interest of the rest of the community. So apart from that, why this individuality started was very briefly explained by our fellow friend here Akash Madhu, with appropriate examples provided from ages in history and up until current day. And also Prince has stated various facts, and he also opposed how individuality might not be linked to mental illness, and other points that were mentioned by Venkat and mm, others were notably very good. So I would like to add to their points while also opposing some of the points that they have mentioned by telling that by telling and furnishing facts that are relevant to present time, which is how individuality has originated is the very question that if we are asking. Individuality was actually put into light and is one of the most influential global values present day, because it became one of the most evolved global values in the present day and most influential values, because of the hurt the groupism had caused, and because of the lack of individuality people carried back then. So in order to promote mental wellness and the well-being of individuals, in order to make individuals more expressive, in order to keep individuals more self-aware, and in order to boost the creativity of people, individuality was promoted, and individual concepts evolved. So the evolution was perfectly advantageous for the society, but how this is going to affect society during the long run, with the evolution of individuality in the present state, has made us think that individuality is going to affect the society in a negative way. So which also disheartens us, but is a very agreeable fact that individuality will affect society negatively. We could take examples of for examples of people developing extreme individualistic characteristics which are not acceptable, because any social gathering we try to make today, people would think about their individual selves and individual plans, and people don't show up. So that is one simple example. So from society up until house. So if you think of an example in terms of a house, if an individual develops extreme individual traits which is differentiated from that of the house, what the individual would face is separation from the rest of the house. So that is how individuality is affecting in terms of society and in terms of house also. I would also like to add that individuals who have developed individual traits, while they are contributing positively in certain terms, their disagreements towards their disagreement towards the common interests of the community is what keeps them separate. And when these number of individuals increase, who like to distinguish themselves from the rest for inappropriate reasons, when these numbers increase, that is how individuality would take a negative turn than it's supposed to. Apart from that, we could also understand individuality better by considering examples of how economy might be affected due to increased individuality. So in order to do that, we could also take an example of a business, if possible, um, or even a government body. Let's consider example of a business where a manager and his team has been provided with a budget of uh, 5,000 per month for their team outings, for a team of 3 people, um, or a team of 4 people, whereas the overall team outing budget of the department is 15K, but the department underlies 3 such teams. So if the manager of team A says that, okay, I have been allotted the budget of 5,000 for my team, I am going to take my team out of the office, which is against the rules, out of the office, and against the policy of the company, to engage them in an activity
Sorry to
which.
interrupt, Gagan. Do you mind if you keep your argument a bit short? Like, you've got some great points, but there's a time limit, and I think you've exceeded it. So, can you wind up after this example? You'll be given a chance
Definitely.
to speak again.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Rose, for reminding. The topic itself is very interesting, so that makes me, cling on to examples and examples one after the other. But with the reminder of yours, I would definitely try to wind up immediately after this example. Thank you. So
Thank you.
we were taking an example of an office where a budget was provided for team A of 5,000. So if team A manager says that, with the allocated budget of 5,000, I have been provided individualism. So I would like to distinguish my team and take them on a separate trail, apart from the trail that was destined by, or apart from the time frame, apart from the uh, frame that was set by the company. So that would be acceptable to some extent. By providing individuality, what the company has already done is providing them a separate budget of 5,000. So what the basic responsibility of manager of team A would be to align his team with the interest of the company and make use of the 5,000 the best way possible. The same goes with society here also. Why we are actually trying to argue individuality and excessive individuality here is, we as people have forgotten the very basic definition of liberty. So if we try and understand the definition of liberty, I don't think individuality would be uh, would needs to be discussed. But provided the misconception that we have about liberty on the present day, uh, we have misconceptualized liberty and freedom. So if we go back and look at the definitions of liberty and freedom, we as individuals, we would come out to be wonderfully functioning society. Else, as I said, and as I've agreed, individuality would lead to diminishing of society over the period of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gagan. Next up will be Suri.
Uh, Thank you. Sorry, I was not very coherent earlier. Uh, I think it's not society versus individualism. Individualism is like, so if we take example of like growth and mutation, right? So society is basically the state or the system itself, and individualism is barely a mutation on the system, right? So if everybody has the same mutation or same trait, it's a common society. Everything works out great. But if you have a case where there is a different mutation, and if that mutation is strong enough, that will change the society, basically to be either to accommodate it, or it will eliminate that mutation so that it remains consistent, right? So individualism is barely a mutation. Everybody is looking after their own interests in some way or the other, if it is aligned with society, there is no change in society. But once it becomes in misalignment with society, that's where the change occurs, right? And of course, sometimes the change would be good and sometimes it would be bad. But in terms of evolution, in the long term, it will evolve into something to be good, else it won't stand for long, right? So that's basically what it is. So for the time being, it might feel like society is degrading because of individualism, but I don't think so. Problem in itself is the individualism. It's probably the ideas that some of the individualism uh, mutations that are bringing, right? So it's not like all the ideas are bad per se. There are like some amazing things that quite a few people have pointed out are also happening and that are also kind of morphing society in the positive way. Let's take few examples, right? So, for example, society was, at least in India, very caste based. And now, with the evolution and mutation and expectation of it being normalized, slowly people have started adopting it. Now, there are like some counter examples where it is degrading. So, it's merely just adapting. So, I don't think so, kind of saying that individualism itself is good or bad and leads to uh, kind of upgrade or degrade of society. It's merely a tool, right? What happens with the tool or what it kind of brings up as an idea is what matters. And there are like several different ideas that are happening because of individuals, and that has always been happening in the past and will keep happening. So individualism becomes more prominent when the ideas are very radical from the societal norms, but individualism is always more or less present. So I don't think so society versus individualism. It's just it's basically saying that conservative ideas or the existing ideas versus new ideas. I think that's not a good comparison. Like mechanisms to produce ideas helps change the society. Now, if the ideas that are brought forward are good, it will help society change in a good way. If they are not so good, it will help change in the bad way. But again, then the next question comes up is like who judges good or bad, right? So one way to judge it would be like, good for certain group of people and then like, bad for like certain group of people and things like that. So those are the variations that exist. In the long term, if the evolution is going in a way that serves a lot of people that are aligned with that, it will evolve in a way that it benefits. And that has been the case ever since the inception. So I think it's much more living thing and like it's not so bad, like all the mutations are bad or something like that. And there are a lot of ideas that come forward that don't live as long. And there are like several examples of those. But I think there are like a lot of hands sprung up. So uh, I will let somebody else kind of pitch in. I think this is a very interesting topic.
Great insights, Suri. I'll let Akash go ahead.
Thank you. It was like people are having very nuanced and like people are full of rich examples when it comes to talking about this topic, and it's so interesting to talk about this. Like I believe, as Prince said like an argument, like he said the fact that individualism doesn't causes mental problems, and it is mental problem has always been existent in our society. Like I understand that people were really having a tough time throughout our human history, but there are reasons to believe that can directly attribute individualism as the biggest culprit, which is resulting in the modern mental health crisis. Like one of the statistical academic example that I have to make is that individualism is a good reason to believe that individualism causes marital breakdown, and marital breakdown in turn causes family breakdown. And when this happens, family breakdown, as you might be aware of it, that it was in study in United States, it has been proven time and again that it is single parent families whose children suffer the most, who are much likely to drop out from the education, who are much likely to go into prison, who are much likely to suicide. And another major factual example that I want to put forward is that it was Emily Durkheim's one of the most very famous book he written on suicide. It was in 1890s, I guess. It was about how he basically proved how Catholics and Protestants, when compared with each other, Protestants were much more likely to commit suicide, resulting because of the fact that Protestant, as you might know, has basically negated the importance of church as an institution. So they break down church as an institution. That basically led to more individualism. And there are many other scholars who believe that it was Protestant ethic which basically drives capitalism by Max Weber. And this individualism caused Protestant people to commit more suicide than their Catholic counterparts. So there are many academic models to argue that individualism indeed does cause mental problems. But the biggest problem that I want to emphasize that I don't think enough people are addressing is that the biggest existential problem that we are facing today is climate change. And it is fundamentally fueled by the current of individualism. We always say it is because of fossil fuels, it is because of all these other polluting industries. It is fundamentally us and our individual impulsive desires which is driving these machines of industries, which is causing climate change and environmental degradation. And since we are trying to address these through all these climate conferences, I believe the biggest point that needs to be addressed on is that on a sociological level, we need to understand and we need to get back on thinking on a more communitarian level. And with increased breakdown of family or institution and community sentiments, people are more emphasis on private consumption or glutinous consumption, I would say, or over consumption. This only leads to more and more exploitation of resources, and this only leads to more and more bigger change in climate and bigger problem for our in the future. That I believe is the biggest testament that I can make against individualism. And Gagan also mentioned that individual is separated from family, like how individual is basically essentially gets socially alienated in this hyper individualistic, and individualism ultimately leads to hyper competition. Individualism won't lead to collaboration. It's only about a quid pro quo agreements all going around. So it ultimately, it's a breaking point will come where our social institutions will fall apart if we go it unhindered, and this can lead to social crisis. And again, I always try to take a balanced argument on any debate, and that's what I've been doing. But in this case, I always believe that it is very hard to do that, considering that we are witnessing the damaging prowess of individualistic, selfish greed, which is ultimately destroying our planet, both literally and figuratively. I believe we can have more emphasis on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Akash. Samarth, you can go ahead. Samarth, are you there?
Hello.
I believe Samarth is not there. Yeah, Madan, I think you can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Rose. And so talking about individuality, the way I see individuality is like, I mean, I can only speak from my perspective, because the way I see individuality is something people see you as not only different than others, but also superior, as also a superiority, or you may be smarter and better than others, for which some people don't wish to associate with you, or because it makes them feel inferior in your presence, or it makes them feel less than what they are. So that's why people tend to isolate, and most people, and also because you don't fit in a certain group, or with a certain company of people. You don't fit in, and maybe that's why I am like that mostly. I am mostly a loner, and I hardly have any friends, and but I am good in my own thing. I know I would say, like, I am highly skilled, talented, intelligent, and knowledgeable, for that matter, than most people, I would say. And I'm also into sports and fitness. I play football, and I'm more athletic as well. I'm better than most players, like whom I play with in my groups, I guess. So that's why when you're all the more superior, say intellectually, emotionally, as well as physically and athletically, like people tend to see some kind of different, superior, or extraordinary, for that matter, like some superhero or something. So that's one positive aspect about this, about individuality, is that feeling of superiority. that you're better than others, and you can contribute in your own ways towards the society, and you can help a lot of people with your amazing knowledge and skill sets, and you can contribute in so many different ways to the society. And so that's the positives out of it. But the negative aspect of it is that this social isolation, people see them as you are better than them, or you're superior, or they don't want to feel less in your presence, and so they tend to isolate you, or leave you alone, or you don't fit in any groups. So that's the problem with people. That's their problem. Of course, you're there to help them, and you're there to contribute your best to them. But if they don't fit you in, it's their problem. So that's why. And you can be happy alone. It's not that you have to be uh, an individual and feel lonely or alone. And you can always do your best and contribute your best in your own ways, provided you're not causing or hurting anybody. You're causing not any harm or hurting to the society. You're not like some kind of a terrorist, rapist, or who indulges in those criminal activities. As long as you're not doing that, you have the right to be however you want, whether as an individual or in a group. And if you don't fit in, then you can be happy alone. That's not a problem. So individuality, yes, if you're not going against the society, it's good. If you're contributing in your own ways, like the way I do, being good at something and doing your best in that, and helping people uh, who uh, who give you those opportunities, so that it helps them. It's good for the society, and we need such individuals, because if everybody thought and felt the same way, then nobody would make an impact in the society or the world. See, everybody saw the apple falling down from the tree. Only Newton questioned why. That's how gravity was invented, right? So we need such individuals who can be different, who are extraordinary, and who can make a change in the society. And I feel I am definitely one of those. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much, Madan. Next up, Samarth.
I think like in this group, like even the most vocal advocates for individualism, uh, I think they would argue for all of the individuals in a given society to be holding some common ethos. Like they might agree that we should live in a society which emphasizes individual freedom and expression, but that individual expression and growth, that must not lead to like visibly like harming like the people around them. I don't think like anybody would argue for that one. So let's say like the majority of the citizens in our country and all of the people in our group, I believe they would treat other people with kindness, and would not want to like physically harm others, unless in very like particular circumstances. I think that's the way the most people are. But there are like a few individuals in society who are so constituted so that their individual expression and their highest potential can be reached by like actively harming other people. Some serial criminals, or like serial murderers came to mind. Like if you're going to like support like unvarnished and unqualified individualism, we have to accept these acts too as acceptable, as repugnant as they might seem. So like this is like an open question that I'm posing. Is there anyone here like who argues for such an unqualified defense of individualism, at the expense of any common shared ethos? Is there actually someone arguing for that one? It's like an open question.
Is that the end of your argument, Samarth?
Like actually, like based on the response I would get, like I wanted to proceed forward, but
We can do that
let's see,
in the
like
unmoderated session. You had another question you posed earlier, so you can write down this one with it, and we can discuss it in the unmoderated session. Is that okay?
yeah, that will be fine. Sure.
Thank you, Samarth. Next up will be Raghav.
Thanks, Rose. So I think I want to kind of reel back the discussion to the primary, the thesis of the argument, which is individualism versus collectivism. And I think a lot of people have added some really interesting points and like the thoughtful, perspectives on the circumference of the topic. Now, see, regardless of whether the focus of our mechanisms favor individual liberty over collective integrity, there is always going to be an individual. There's always going to be a society, and there has to be a balance. So the argument is basically about emphasis as to where the emphasis should lie. And we were also talking about the competitive versus collaborative nature of these topics, right? I personally think that I have a very unique perspective on this in that I believe that even though individualism will increase competition, it is not necessarily a detrimental thing, because people who are there is a high cost to individualism. First of all, when you have an individualistic society, there is a high cost to it, because human beings, when we are learning how to exercise our individual freedom, we are going to make a lot of mistakes. We are going to cause some chaos. And this is the price that we pay in letting those individuals get to a point of personal evolution. Okay. And even if they start out being hyper competitive and try to, debase each other, they will eventually arrive at a point of understanding that the only way to maximize their individual personal growth is through collaboration. Okay, this is an inevitable point of any individual's evolution. You're paying the price for them to get to that point. But if we rely on the assumption that a majority of the individuals in society are intelligent enough to realize that, they will naturally come to a point where they will organize themselves without requiring a certain collective construct or collective enforcement of this principle of collective interest. They will get there. This is an economic theory on this as well, of how anybody in a game theory, anybody who's coming in to win in a competitive advantage, there is a reward in collaboration. So inevitably, individuals will arrive at a point where they will want to collaborate with others in order to further their own interests. And I think that it is ultimately better to have individuals who realize that on their own, even if there's a high price to pay for them to get there, than somebody sitting at the top and doing that. Because I think Prince was the one pointing this out, but basically that collectivism kind of fosters mediocrity, because there is not sufficient competition, there is no sufficient incentive for an individual to excel. As long as they follow the rules and norms, they're okay. So why would anybody want to excel, right? So individualism fosters excellence. It also fosters a natural, organic evolution to a point where everybody gets to collaborative mindset. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Raghav. I'll let Ram go ahead.
Yeah, I've actually have been quite impressed by Aka's point. He has been quite thorough and very knowledgeable on all the points he have put forward. And apart from that, I want to talk about three things in this. So I don't remember someone, but they have said that mental health and individualism is not exactly correlated. I completely disagree to that point. Whether one could be right or wrong, but I cannot disagree to the point more than anything else. So we have humans have always been wired to be social group. They are fundamentally wired to be that. So individualism always it will be proportional to mental health degradation. So that is not something I want to argue about. And secondly, there was a great point put by Surya, I believe, about climate change. That was a good example to talk about. So he was saying countries like first world countries like US, UK, who have uh, taken down industrialism in the 19th and 18th centuries, have given great carbon footprint to the degradation of climate change, and now they want to play the game of reducing that in the cost of development. So that is a great example, but one thing we have to consider here is the ultimate society is not a country. The ultimate society is the world. So when an individual country says, like India or China says, no, you have done your thing, we have to grow now too. That is not a society. India is not a society here. India is an individual, and China too. So if they think about their individual interests, they will obviously want to, develop themselves at the cost of their carbon footprint. But if they think in terms of, the world as a society, in this example, the world is a complete society and the countries are the individual, assuming there are no foreign planets like here. So then they will, get get a table, sit down and talk about the policies, new policies that will be, at the cost of efficiency, they will be at least foolproof. And the third example I would like to make is sports, like we all know, are a great example, team sports, of how societies run in a very smaller time frame. So for a season, for an year, there are teams which perform greatly and perform badly. So there have always been proven, it has always been proven, that team which thinks about the complete team and given the roles for each individual will always perform better than a team of 11 great players. In the example of cricket or football, I'm saying 11 great players can always be defeated by 11 at least good players who have a good system in place. They know their strengths and weaknesses. So a good society will always beat a group of individuals who have been excellent than the individuals of the society. So there are obviously great examples, you all know about all the teams in IPL or football that I follow. There might be other sports that I don't know as well. So that those are the three things I wanted to say. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ram. Next up will be Prince.
Thanks, Rose. First of all, regarding the climate change part, it's coming a lot, so I can't help it. According to an analysis by NASA's GISS, since 1880s, sorry, excuse my code. Since 1880s, 1.1 degrees Celsius is the average global temperature rise. The ozone layer is healing, and the average global temperature rise is not something solely responsible because of the industrial revolution. It is something known as Milankovitch cycles, which says that there is a constant cycle of global warming and cooling. Unfortunately, we are born in this global warming cycle. And if that is due to some sort of individualism, then that individual is the Almighty God. Mr. Ram rightly pointed out, and I'm so thankful to you that you pointed out that humans are social animals. Rightly so, said by my guru Aristotle. But the whole quote is whoever is delighted in solitude is either a wild beast or a god. I unquote. Proving my point that there is no place of mediocrity. Either there is an individual excellence or there is a failure. And I guess as a society, we need to appreciate failure because great example by story of mutations that if these kind of individuals keep on coming into the society, then due to the natural law, it will eventually lead to the evolution. Now, someone said one of the definitions of individualism was distinguished interest from community. What is the issue with having a separate or a kind of unaligned interest as compared to what the community thinks? If we think that there should be such homogeneity in the society and we are not able to appreciate this heterogeneity of the society, then we as a society should not appreciate Mrs. Savitribai Phule, who was the first of the female teachers. And when she went to teach, stones were filtered by society. If she had stood to that mediocrity level and just said, okay, my interests are not aligning with the community or the society, I should stay away, we would not have had this much representation of women in education and educational institutes. We see the example of Dr. Ambedkar. In a time when Dalits were not allowed to sit side by side to the so-called elite class. That time he was there, he took the education, and both of which examples shows that they achieved individual excellence and they came back to the society and gave back to the society. For Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, it was the issues of reservation and the class, the social justice thing. And for Ma'am Phule, it was the proving the importance of education to the women in Pune and surrounding Maharashtrian area. So can be the example of Sarojini Naidu. We need these kind of rebels to be anti-status quo and hold these tendencies, because if not so, then how are we going to evolve? The manager example was taken out that if 5,000 is given to a manager, then he should align the group to the interest of the company. If he's taking them out, that might be a different style. Now, I do agree that it might completely collapse, or it might, on the contrary, lead to that team achieving excellence, or getting rid of that quote unquote pressure that we face in the corporate world, and that could in turn increase their efficiency. So it's not always that the person who is going on a different road is wrong. Sometimes he may be just in a walking the road not taking. Yeah, Rose.
Thank you so much, Prince. Samarth, you can go ahead.
I like the analogy some of the previous speakers gave about how the invention of new ideas in society is akin to this creation of new mutations in an organism of a cell, and depending and that mutation, it is going to be selected in the biological world depending upon whether it is beneficial for the the survival and the propagation of the species, or if not, that mutation will be rejected. I think that's a very good analogy to apply for any of the new innovations coming in terms of ideas, any new ideas and innovations coming into human society too. So we'll have to there will come a situation where those ideas will be tested out, and if they prove beneficial to human society in the long run, then those will be accepted, or if not, not. And I would say that many of these ideas, which emphasizes individualism, those will be relegated to the status of the bad mutations, which are harmful and degrading to the society in the longer term, and it will eventually be rejected. So that will happen, or eventually the entire, the human society itself will collapse into anarchy. Either of these things will happen, because many of the ideas and overemphasizing this individualism, what the problem with them is, for them to come into existence into for them to come into existence in the first place, they required a stable society which was built on shared common ethos. This was a point very well made by, I think, Akash, like one of the previous speakers, where he said that all of these individual ideas that are coming up, they are well and good, but they'll have to take a back seat depending upon whether they serve to the larger good of the society. So what we see, unfortunately these days, is the the foundation which was necessary for many of these ideas, which emphasizes individual freedom, like yeah. These ideas that have come into picture, they have ended up undermining the very foundations that they were dependent upon coming into existence in the first place. So you might ask, like, who are the innovators of the present day? Like, who are the cultural innovators or the technological innovators of the present day? They are a very small minority, very intelligent and very qualified people, and for them to be able to thrive, first of all, they must come from a stable family. They must come from a society which is a well functioning and which has like low crime rates, and which has like a good education system, and it's basically like people who are like cooperative in that society, and all of these things, like people who agree on many things and disagree on some things, and they want to take the society forward. It is in this climate that all of the cultural and technological innovators, they are born, brought up, and they're able to thrive. But unfortunately, what we see is many of these innovators, they like end up causing harm to the society, which allowed them to come to that position in the first place. We have all of these many of the people in academia, like I don't want to say like they are from this political or that political spectrum, but many of the people in academia, like what they end up doing is create this like elaborate and abstract theories which do not have much value in describing reality. They conceptualize these theories and they propagandize it, and the some of the governments, they end up implementing these like far-fetched ideas. The net result of all of this is to undermine the foundations of the society which allowed these individuals to flourish in the first place. So that is why I agree with some of the others, because when they say that individualism, when it is in the uh, pursuit of the interest of the larger good, that must be encouraged. But when it so often happens that it actually destabilizes the larger society, that kind of individualism, it must definitely be discouraged.
Thank you, Samarth. Next up will be Akash. Before you go ahead, Akash, once you make your argument, please start with the closing statement since it's almost 12:30, and we can then move into the unmoderated session. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Um, I will just begin with the concluding statement because everyone was so nuanced in the argument. I believe most of the good points have already been covered. So we all come to the agreement that ultimately it's about a consensus. We don't want to go to a hyper individualistic anarchy or hyper societal or conservative society. We don't want either. It's ultimately about a balance. So I believe the balance should come from establishing what is that common social ethic that we want to lay as foundation. I believe that's how a good nation is formed. I believe that's how a good society is formed. So much so, I believe that's how a good family is formed. When we have the common value system that we share, common ethic that we want to pursue. For Western civilization, for most part of their history, it was Jesus, it was Christ, but it can't be anymore. That's why they are struggling with that sense of identity crisis. For India, I believe any religion cannot suffice, even though it might be argued that Hinduism has that tolerant nature, but Hinduism as it is politicized in the way today it is, I can't confidently say it can lay a good foundation for that common social ethic. So I believe the best candidate for our nation or in general our global society is the constitutional makers or of the modern thinkers of the 19th and 20th centuries and their ideas, which I believe should lay the foundation for our, be it the Gandhian values, be it the Ambedkarite values, be it our own constitutional morality, which ultimately lay the foundation upon which the individualism should flourish. Because it's a very philosophical question as well. Can we actually say an individual can exist without society? Like when we say individualistic needs, well, individualism can only survive, even philosophically, only within the ambit of society and societal value system. And somewhat rightly put forward that when the individual is modulated or motivated to pursue the societal needs, that's when magic happens. We need to have this common social ethic and we need to inculcate this common social ethic into our individuals and let an environment of individualism to flourish. I believe that's the way ahead. I believe that is the true way to allow human flourishing in the long run as well as in the short run. Thank you.
Thank you, Akash. Saju, you can go ahead.
So I feel I am in agreement with one comment from somebody called Suri, which went under the radar. So I've not yet heard an argument which says individualism is against having a society. So I think there in itself is closure for all arguments because it means that both of them can coexist. Thank you.
Saju, is that the end of your argument? I mean, your closing
The
statement.
closing, yeah, closing.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Gagan, you can go ahead.
Yes, hello. Yeah. So all of the points discussed were wonderful. So in order to conclude, I'd like to say again that individualism in itself is not a sin, but a misconception of individualism that we are carrying today is the problem that we are currently facing, and that is the problem that we'll be facing. And in order to make it a more less burdening problem, we need to understand for ourselves the definitions of liberty and freedom, as I told you further. So I'd like to conclude by providing the definitions of these two. So what freedom actually is, by its core definition, is condition of being free from slavery, detention, oppression. It is from political, might it be political independence with the exemption from arbitrary exercise of authority in the performance of specific action. So that is the very basic definition of freedom, as opposed to various definitions and alterations that we have reached today. So if we look at freedom at its core level, that's what freedom meant. And when we speak about liberty, which is very important for us to understand here, which is from Thomas Jefferson, who quotes, right to liberty is an obstructed action according to our will within limits drawn around us by the equal rights of others. So, if we just try and understand our individual liberties and rights, which would help us stay individualistic, but by understanding the rights of others and liberty of others, we would be staying active in the society. So, if we miss this understanding of definition of liberty, we would be leading society into failure by being excessively individualistic. So I would conclude by telling that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gagan. Is there anybody else who wishes to make a concluding statement? Prince, go ahead, please.
Just one thing, Rohit. Yeah, as I said, like we need extraordinary individuals.
Prince, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. So, yeah, so although I agree that there should be some social commerce that should be followed by all, but there are some individuals who are just not born for it. Their nature does not allow them to subscribe to this homogeneity. They are born with a certain kind of rebellious anti-status quo ideology. So I guess these people, they should get the freedom to go on and practice their individualism. And we as a society should see what their this travel and this experience has brought up, and we can take the positives from it. So I guess that is the basic essence of all who are following individuality, to upgrade and evolve the current emotions. Yes.
Thank you, Prince. Ram, you can go ahead.
Yeah, in my opinion, ideal society will always be a balance between these two. There can't be a one thing alone which can be in a good society. So, as my previous speaker rightly pointed out, some people will always be choosing to be individuals, and a good society should always accommodate that. And those are the ones who bring new ideas, and those are the ones who bringing the change to make the society change according to times. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram. Akash, go ahead, please.
Yeah, like as everyone was talking about this balance, I have this good point like that I heard from Naval Ravikant's podcast, where he talks about the perfect balance. Like when it comes to individualism and collectivism in general, it's not either individualism or collectivism. It's a spectrum, and that's how, as an individual, we should approach about it. And it's a good suggestion that he suggested how we should go about with our life, and that's what I follow as well. The point he made is that when it comes to something really close to us, let's say our family, our immediate neighborhood, immediate family, immediate friends, we have to get as society oriented collectivist as we can possibly be, because it is very easy to settle our disputes. It is very easy to make everyone hear, and it is very easy to have a common shared ethic. But as we distant the individual, as we distant and go towards district and goes towards state and then goes to a nation and then global level, we should get increase on that libertarian spectrum as much as we can. And by the time we get on that global approach, we should be as libertarian as we possibly could be. That I believe that's a life mantra that I follow in my like political and social preferences that I always make. So that I believe is that's my suggestion as well, to think it is in a spectrum like individualism and collectivism, and balance it in accordingly depending upon the situation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Akash. Saju, please go ahead, make a closing statement, and we'll be moving into the unmoderated session.
I already made my statement.
Oh, okay, no problem. I saw you raised your hand, that's why. Okay, in that case, if there is nobody else who wants to make a closing statement, we will be moving into the unmoderated session. So in this session, people need not raise their hands, but please make sure to speak one after another so the decorum in the session is maintained. I believe Samarth had two questions that he had posed in the debate part of the session. Samarth, you can start posing one question after another to avoid confusion.
Yeah, so my first question will be, are any of the speakers here today taking a rather unconventional stance that the allowing, you know, individuals to express their full individuality and allowing them to full maturity, will that entail, justifying some of the individuals in a society who can reach that state, of full like individual attainment through the active harming of others, such as like the serial killers? Would anybody justify that one, or be okay with that one, or take like a neutral stance to that one, or not actively condemn it?
Okay, let's ignore that question. Probably move to the next one.
Yeah, I would just add that keeping aside the serial killer part, I would rather see it as this example that there is a family structure going on currently, where we have our grandfathers, our fathers, and then the newer generations, which are, comparatively more rebellious. And it's not that the rebellious newer generation will go and punch their father or kill their father. It's simply that they have a different idea of thought, and they go on, they explore, they try to come up with new ideas, and more often than not, they're new and better than what their parents had. And then the child comes back to their parents and teaches them new ways. As APJ Abdul Kalam said, that the corruption can be eradicated from the state if the newer generation can tell their parents about what's right and wrong. Appreciating that fact that yes, the newer generation is rebellious and they'll find out new theories, and more often than not, they'll be beneficial for the society. Yes, Amit.
I don't think so. Realistically, you can rein in like how much individualism can express themselves, right? I think there is a spectrum. In some cases, it becomes indigestible for society. Doesn't matter whether it is good or no, and it will go after it. So, for example,
I think the example that Samarth gave is like serial killers. Like, I don't think so anybody at any point does appreciate it or does like the idea. So they will almost always tend to go after it. But let's assume that society has gone crazy and people like that idea, they will applaud it. Right. So again, like there are ethos, as like you were trying to point out in some common bits. And whenever individuals are trying to change something, I don't think so they are against everything in the society. They're against a few ideas, and that's what they are trying to change in general. And when you're talking about like expression of full individuality, I again, for those ideas that they might want to change and a lot of them they adhere to, they might want to express all of it. In some cases they will get to, in some cases they won't. Again, that's depends upon where they want to put themselves, whether they want to change the society, whether they just want to disengage from the society, and whether society allows that or no, or like whether society. So it's a mixed bag. It's very difficult to say, like oh, uh, like serial killer is not the epitome of individualization. Like, I think there are like different things that people might take even more offense at different points of time based on where you are.
Yeah, and adding to what Suri said, as I said in the beginning of the meet as well, individualism for me is living in harmony with others as well as himself. So I don't think going out and going out on a killing spree is living in harmony with others.
No, I agree, Prince, that is not the ideal situation for you. But I'm just pointing out the fact that it is for very tiny minority of individuals out there. So I'm talking only in respect of them. Like, so if you are like going to take an active stance against them, we must like logically say that everyone must share a common ethos, and that common ethos is what allows us to condemn these particular individuals who want to express their full individuality to the active harming of others. So that is what I'm arguing at, that even the most radical individualist, he must subscribe to some common ethos with in agreement with the larger society if he is to condemn such heinous acts.
Guys,
So,
I want to like
I mean,
make some like adjustment here. Like basically, see, you're talking about the extremities here. When you're talking about like serial killers, you're talking about the extremities of individualism versus collectivism. Okay, both of them are like I think both of them are kind of problematic in different ways. But when we are talking about individualism versus collectivism on this context, right, in the context of this debate, we're basically talking about the emphasis. Which one should be more dominant? Not that which one should be completely eliminated. Okay, so let's understand that there will always be a certain emphasis on collective ethos. We cannot even function as a society if we don't have a certain collective agreed upon basis for even forming the laws. So even in the most individualistic societies, you have enough consensus to draft the laws and to draft the protocols of the society, because the society cannot function without those protocols. Now, when it comes to like decision making about those laws, about those things, that's where the emphasis lies. Well, if it's an individual society, then they will favor those laws that prioritize individual liberties over collective interest. Okay, so that is where the nuanced conversation is. When you take the extremities, I don't think there is any nuance there. Everybody is on the same side. Nobody wants to have serial killers going around making things chaotic for everybody else. But so let's bring that focus to the center line, talking about where which way we should lean towards this discussion. And I want to bring an example. Okay, so for example, growing up, right, I was so frustrated about the way that the schools were so collectively organized. They had no emphasis on individualism in schools. Like, for example, you can't even go in with a certain kind of haircut. You can't color your hair. You can't express your individualism. Like individuals have their own identity or their own focus, all those things, and you're not allowed to express these things because the image of your school will get spoiled. That is the rationale. This is a classic example of like collective versus individualistic interest. So that is a kind of like focus which makes me want to focus on individualistic interest, because like a child sporting a haircut as a measure of like expressing their individuality is no in no way like creating as much of a damage to anybody compared to like having like for example a serial killer or something like that. But even there, I feel like majority of the people will want the child to sort of like like follow this uniform code. Everybody is the same, and you're all in the school uniform, so you're all like just basically property of the school, for you to dictate, like, for you to act in terms of what favors the school's image. And I think somebody brought up this point of like, what is the definition of freedom, talking about the lack of enslavement and all that stuff. Enslavement also has degrees. Like you don't have to be physically chained to a place to feel the lack of freedom. You can also have various degrees of like more subtle ways in which you feel enslaved. For example, a child going to school and coming back and like following everything that they're told in their home and as well as the school, it is going to feel like an enslavement because you don't have control over your time. That is not as much of a free way of existence as like having some amount of leeway, some amount of decision making power, all these things. So there are degrees to what freedom entails, and individualistic societies emphasize personal freedom so that like you have control over your time, your assets, your wealth, your everything. So I think I want to bring the discussion back to that center line. Yeah, I'm done now.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Just a
I
small.
point out that we
One second, guys. I see Gagan and Samarth raising their hands. Guys, you don't need to raise your hands anymore. You can just go ahead and speak whatever opinions you have. Just please make sure you're not cutting others off.
Yes,
I'll
sure,
make a
sure, thank you.
small. I would have like a question to be answered, which was asked by someone here, which is how is individualism hindering us having a society? It's not a hindrance, right?
Like I would try to make the case for Samat that the example was not very fitting with regards to serial killers, but the point he raised is very accurate. Like the point was, people always say, okay, when we talk about individualism, it's a logical, rational freedom, taking into consideration other people's personal integrity. Okay, when we say freedom should not cause damage to others, what exactly do we mean? Do we mean only direct physical damage that we can uh, uh, see at a particular point, or do we actually mean damages which is systemic, which causes as a direct gradual evolution of years of accumulation of individualist trend? That point can be made for our climate. That point can be made for our family as an institution. I do personally believe, and there are academic literature to back that as well, that family institutions are very important for a person's mental health. And Summer basically pointed out that the serial killer tendencies, which puts them into such frenzy or in such extreme situation where they basically go rampage, is a direct result of societal degradation resulting from weakened social institutions, which can directly be attributed to the individualist social trend. This argument that okay, damage is only direct damages can be taken into consideration is very tricky, and it has to be dealt carefully. That it's not just about law. It's not just about freedom and legal implications. Also about the resulting consequence of not having a good social ethic to follow for each individual, and every individual coming up with his own theories of good and bad, and this will ultimately lead to the social degradation in its more purest or in more spiritual sense, I would say. Thank you.
Yes, hello. If you're done, Akash, thank you for your points, as well as Suri, thank you for your points. I would like to answer one of the questions, and also would like to raise a question for Raghav particularly, because I found his point really interesting, where he mentioned and answered quoting freedom, as well as he also mentioned that he's working towards something where a school uniform and haircut was questioned. So I would mainly try to ask you, Raghav, in order to get more in-depth knowledge about how our thoughts are being how our thoughts are in this particular definition. So when we say school children were being asked to have a particular sort of haircut, so what sort of a question that would raise within me is, so that according to me would be a particular set of guidelines, like Rose provided for me for us right now before we started speaking for each other. She said, "Do not cut each other off. Speak for yourselves." So don't you think having a particular haircut would be under a specific would be considered as a guideline rather than suppression of individualism? So if the school asks children to get a particular sort of haircut, or if the school mentions, as far as I have seen, a school would ask individuals to get haircut under a certain set prerequisites. They would not infer to get a particular type of a haircut. So if that is being done, so don't you think that would actually foster children to mingle together and get along together, rather than setting them up for individual by if some person has one sort of a haircut, and another person comes up with a bald head, and other person comes up with a half cut hair. So will that be agreeable? So if that is freedom, I don't think I would be agreeing on that page, especially in a school. Not because I don't respect individualism, but just to understand freedom in a better way, especially for children when minds have not yet evolved. But if it is people above 18, I'm pretty sure they would be knowing more about freedom and liberty. But when it comes to school, I think we would need that little bit of a tweak and a guideline that has been preset. So that's what I would like to question you, Raghav. So would you like to answer it in a yeah?
Sure. Thanks,
No,
Arvind. Yeah.
take my question also, Raghav. How is having a similar haircut improving the cohesion between children? Yeah, that also.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Yeah, it's great that you guys asked the questions so that I can clarify this. So one of the things about individuality is that you kind of like form, because like one of the basis for individuality is that you are thinking on your own. Okay, the moment you start thinking on your own, and you want to sort of like be the agent that is responsible for the decisions you make and the actions you perform, you start to form a certain identity of your own. Okay, you start to create you kind of like want to differentiate and distinguish and sort of like identify yourself a certain way, and a hairstyle or the clothes you wear or the way you distinguish yourself, these things become a symbolic representation of your inner state. Every human being, there has to be a correspondence between how they operate within themselves and how they want to present themselves outside. And I think Gagan, you were talking about this whole situation of like kids about 18, or like anybody about 18, they form their own minds and they're capable of doing these things. I disagree with this in that we all have our own minds from a very young age. It's not like there is a certain distinct point in our lifetime where things on a snap it changes. These things are like gradient. They go on for different ages for different people. Some people, they start making decisions. They start forming their own thoughts at a very young age. And the problem with collectivism is that no matter who you are, you're meant to follow the directives from the top down, and that creates a certain problem where individuals are forming their identities and forming their original thinking and everything from an early age. They feel suppressed and they feel like their freedom is reduced. Okay, and if you allow children to the freedom to exercise themselves, right, most of the people who are capable of that faculty, because not everybody is capable of like developing individuality to a certain extent. A lot of people are feeling comfortable in just being part of the herd. They feel safer as being a part of the herd than sort of differentiating themselves. By allowing the exercise of individuality to happen at a very young age, you're allowing those people who have an affinity to develop their individuality and distinguish themselves to exercise greater freedom, and thereby allowing to accelerate their personal growth and personal evolution. And you will allow them to prosper. Okay. So in no way is that harming other people. It's just like speeding up their own personal evolution. I hope that answers your question. If there's something unanswered, please let me know.
Before you go
yeah.
ahead, I'll just like to add a little bit about what Akash said because it was related to the topic. Rightly so, there are several academias that are there to prove that the family as an institution has so much to do. Oh my God, it is a savior that it has saved us from uh, so many mental issues. But on the contrary, what is the relevance of family as an institution in India in the present times? 89% of rapes are done by people who are known to the victim. Additionally, there are also several academias supporting that the biggest source of child trauma is the family. So it is not that it is just individualism. If individualism has part A, then I guess family is A into 10 responsible for mental trauma. And I'll give you guys the cue to return to the previous conversation. The school guidelines are just an attempt to create the homogeneity and suppress the individual expression within students. Yeah, please carry on.
I'm glad that some of the previous speakers clarified that none of us are advocating for the extreme forms of individualism or the collectivism. The example that I gave, like everyone like was ready to reject that one and said that these extreme forms should be suppressed by society and punished by society. So now we can move on to the more nuanced arguments regarding collectivism and individualism. That argument has these discussions have already been taken place and many good points have been made. And I would say that Raghav made a very good point about how this individuality, it allows us to not put like a facade, like what the individual persons we are evolving, we can express that in the form of what we wear and the makeup we do. And that is one of the like plus points of individualism. But I would argue that even here things become like very contested, because like there are like more than a handful of people, I would say, like who would be willing to you know, dress themselves in very skimpy clothing and go out in public, and to avoid the situations like well, first of all, even in the most like liberal Western countries, there is actually law against public nudity. Public nudity is restricted in Western countries, is restricted to like very niche places, and it is like discouraged and it is made illegal in the vast majority of public places. So that will mean some of the individuals who want to express their individuality through, like walking nude in the public places, for them the individuality will be suppressed. And also there is, we know that there is a growing trend towards wearing skimpy clothing in public. Many people might take exception that I even brought up this example, because who am I to like say like to judge a person about what he should be wearing? But I think there should be standards for even this as well. There should be limits for even this as well. And even in the most liberal countries, they have come up with a law saying public nudity is not allowed. And further, I will say I support that one. And further, I will say that some of the expressions that we see in the public places, they are in bad taste. I'm not saying that they should be made illegal, but when people are roaming around displaying their butt cheeks, for example, in many of the Western countries, this is like a not uncommon occurrence. It is actually a common occurrence. People walking in the streets like baring their butt cheeks, it is in bad taste. And it is like, I would say, it is like a perverse outward expression of inward emotion. That is what it is. or an outward expression of food taste. So, like, even though I do not support like laws like banning skimpy clothing, I think a culture which encourages some form of clothing and outward expression and discourages others, it is very much justified. And all of them should not get like a blanket approval under the name of individualism. So these are the points like I want to make to say that like even in these like supposedly non-contentious issues, the issue of individualism versus individual collectivism versus individual expression, it becomes like very contested. Yeah.
No, see,
Wonderful.
you made a long, see, several people have made very long points, and I missed a lot of points actually. I wanted to speak, but it is going on for 5-10 minutes actually. So I will make a very short point, okay? If anybody has visited any of the temples of India, Channakeshwar or Konark temples, you should see the individualism on display carved in stone on those temples. Okay. The Britishers are the people who are ashamed of us. We are not ashamed of ourselves. This idea of having a certain way of dressing, uniform way of dressing, all the students should wear one color, one hairstyle. These are all imported ideas. Our Indian ideas and value system is of individualism. That is why we are called a higher species, right? Because we have understood that individualism is nothing but strengthening of the society. It is society is not because of individualism is not because of society. It is the other way around. Society is because of individualism, and we have enshrined and written it into our constitution, right?
No, I would disagree with this characterization of what the Hindu religion it is. The vast majority of the sects of Hinduism that has been followed by the vast majority of people in India across the ages, you would be surprised the kind of the sexual restrictions that would be put in place. We living in 21st century India, we have forgotten what the actual prescriptions were and the justifications behind these prescriptions. For the vast majority of the sects of Hinduism, the actual prescription was that any sex that doesn't result in procreation, it is actually a sin. So that is the reality of the Hindu traditions and Hindu law and Hindu ethics. And the specific examples of the temple carvings, it is not meant to encourage like what it is not meant to encourage like acts deemed as like sexually like explicit among people. It is rather to describe like this too is a reality of society. Our lived reality encompasses very many things, and sex too is a part of it. But that doesn't give the leeway to engage in like sexual libertinism. The carvings in these temples was never intended to portray any approval of sexual libertinism ever.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Samath is saying. These are you're comparing various eras of like what what was the norm of the society. Back I mean like there are many societies which actually there is like top nudity on both men and women, which are like normal. That is the norm of the society.
Yes, I would like to add. I would like to add to it. So first I'd like to get to the point where we were talking about enjoying. Hello. Yes. Am I audible? Am I audible?
You're audible, Gagan.
Yes. I would like to start by getting us to a point where we were arguing freedom. So Raghav, your answer was agreeable to a certain point.
I guess
I
Rohit, can
Raghav
you
is
mute
speaking in
yourself?
the
I think two
background.
people are talking and it's very unclear. Like if one person can
Yes,
speak at
yes,
a time,
yes,
that
yes.
would be helpful.
So if I can continue with answering the questions answered before questions raised before. Yeah. Yes. So Raghav, thank you for answering my previous question. It was great. And Mr. Samath and as well as Saju has made some magnificent points regarding sculptures on temples of Channakeshwar temple and everything. But speaking of enjoying greater freedom, which Raghav had answered previously, so when we say a greater freedom, so I would like to once again specify in order for us to enjoy freedom, freedom for you, freedom for me, and freedom for Akash, and freedom for Suri, and freedom for Samat might all be different inside our minds, because that's what we call freedom for ourselves. So what is freedom basically is, that's what I would like to specify and answer, and make a point here today. So what is freedom is the collective freedom of the people. So that's what I meant to say. My freedom is not supposed to surpass or suppress your freedom. So that is true freedom, right? So that would
Very
be
well said. Very
enjoyment.
well.
So yes, that would be the achievement of greater freedom. So if I'm saying that my freedom would want to would want to do something that is majorly disagreeable by many, and but I would still insist upon achieving it because it's my freedom, that would not be accounted to freedom, and that would be that would need to be restricted so that others get to enjoy their freedom. So similar would be the case of haircut and uniforms. Also, I that's what I think, because uniforms are inferred upon children, especially in schools, which happen to be very important for our nation as well as education system. So now from a point of view that I've seen, there are children of various backgrounds. Not everybody are blessed with you know decent economical backgrounds to wear what they want, dress how they like, and show up to places how they'd want to show up. So school is a place where in India, especially mentioning the context of India, school is a place where people or children from every sort of a background would show up. School being a common place, having a proper dress code would mean that the liberty of people who are less benefited would be would be at par with people who are blessed with much economical background. So I think that would be the core intention of setting the guidelines, but not to restrict the child's creativity. But what I'd like to clarify once again here is, by setting preset guidelines for children on how to act, we won't be suppressing their creativity completely. So, if that is the misconception, I think I would disagree with it. But the point where I would agree with Raghav is, as he says, at certain places in India, there is extreme suppression that they would tell students to sit, stand, go here, go there. So that is extreme suppression of creativity. I would agree to that. But in terms of basic norms set by schools, I don't think that would be harming creativity in any way. Because if you teach a kid how to think at the start and leave him to create for himself, he would come out to be a much more creative and valuable individual than a kid who has not been taught a preset guideline. A child who has not been taught a preset guideline would be more creative, but he might be destructive also, right?
Okay,
So because
Gagan, I think you've made a great points, but yeah, I think you are kind of repeating yourself. But yeah, I think we kind of understand where you're coming from and what you're trying to say. Now, let me address a
Mhm.
couple of things. Okay, a couple of things that you pointed about, like for instance, like freedom. You talked about collective freedom. Now, again,
Yes, yes, yes.
freedom is a it's not like it's something that everybody can have and everybody can have more of it. there is certain balance that need to maintain, just same as like what individualism collectivism. When you maximize individual freedom, you are putting a toll on the collective freedom. So when you maximize the collective freedom,
disagree.
Let me finish, Saju. You can disagree all you want, but let me finish before you assume some things. So like, let's say that, let me give an example of what this freedom, individual freedom versus collective freedom looks like. For example, if I had the freedom, absolute individual freedom to go and drive whichever way I want on the road, I will be taking a toll on the freedom of the others who are also using that road. That is the
Yes.
same way that individual freedom and collective freedom works. These forces are in collision. If you maximize individual freedom, you are putting a price on the collective freedom. So that is the reason why we have agreed to arrive at a certain balance. That's why we stop at red lights and we move when the lights turn green. So there is a hit to the individual freedom that is acceptable, because we all arrive at this consensus that this actually makes more sense. This is the way where we can actually sustainably conduct ourselves to
Yeah.
create a balance. So now coming to the question about the whole uniform thing and all that, I understand the rationale for why in a country like India, where there is economic disparity, you want to bring a certain level of equanimous, at least the perception of equality in a social space, where
Yes.
enforcing uniforms actually makes sense from that perspective. But even there, like cutting your hair is not going to take a lot of money. Like you can cut your hair whichever way you want, and even there is a certain enforcement of like the will of the organizers or the authority onto the children, and that enforcement is highlighted primarily because we are a collective society. We are a society that has an emphasis on collectivism rather than individuality, because people, it's so, in this forum, I think most people understand the value of individuality, but out there, when you go there, if you speak in advocation of individuality, they will like sort of like raise their eyebrows. They will not let you speak, because majority of the people in this country, they have a collectivist mindset, and they want to punish the individuals who want to sort of like isolate themselves and then like excel, or like create a separate identity for themselves. And that is the reason. That's also the reason why there is such a high prevalence of caste system and like caste oriented thinking, because they identify as a group rather than as an individual, and they want to maximize the benefits of the group. So this is problematic, because like in the examples that you gave, where we are talking about certain places where there's such a strict enforcement of like top down authoritarianism, that people will say like when to sit, when to stand, when to go to the bathroom, and all these things. That the primary reason why that happened is because of the prevalence of collectivism, because these people grow up honoring the collective interest so much so that they will happily sacrifice their individual liberty, and they expect the same from everybody else, and they will become like tyrants when they have the power. And it also demonstrates a certain lack of individual personal evolution in these people. These people don't reason as an individual. They will try to like enforce traditions regardless of how mindless they are, because that's what they're used to. That's what collective mindset fosters, a certain dogmatic like adherence to principles that they hold above themselves, and they want everybody to follow that, and if you don't, they punish you, because they're not equipped with the faculties to operate on an individual basis, to make decisions on their own agency, because their agency has not evolved, because they've never had the chance to like exercise their own individual faculties of decision making and agency. So that is the reason why I favor individualism, because it fosters that individual thinking to a point where everybody can operate as autonomous individuals making decisions for themselves. And that way, we don't have to have these dogmatic rules to organize a society. We can all, like over here, right, in this forum, it's a great example of like the product of individualism, because like, everybody here who has an opinion to share, you are coming into the platform to say it because you have the experience. You have the experience of applying your agency and doing these things. Otherwise, we would not be able to have these conversations. And that is what I want to have on a larger scale by emphasizing on individualism. So I rest my case there.
Yes, Raghav. I understand. I
So
understand your point.
I've been listening, so I would like to speak like few lines.
Please, Sajid, please.
In fact, I
Yeah,
am
please
not
speak.
able to put my words properly. What Raghav said is correct, but I want to differentiate very slightly. For example, if you are playing a game and like kabaddi or something or cricket, and you are saying I will run wherever I want to, and if I say that no, you are not obeying the rules, then I am not acting against my individualism. It is not. It is obviously you are setting your individual freedom aside because you are playing a game, right? And there are
Mhm.
rules for it. Same case with driving also. Uh, everybody, there are a lot of people to use the road, and everybody in India decided we would always drive on the left side. And there are many countries in which they have all collectively decided that no, we will drive on the right side. Correct. Now
Yes,
that
yes,
is not against, that is not going against individual freedom. It is not a freedom to sacrifice, right? There is a rule to we are following because there is only one road, and that is why. But that is not equatable with the wearing of uniforms, dresses in schools. I never understood why there is a uniform in schools. There are arguments given that such and such rich person and such poor person and all those things. But that means there is discrimination in the society itself, right? And now you are trying to hide it. So
yes.
this kind of critical thinking has to happen. There is lot of misinformation spreading in India, especially regarding this word called UNIFORM, uniform. It is being used everywhere indiscriminately, and it is causing a lot of harm in the society because half of the people don't know our rich history also, right?
Mhm.
There is no problem in expressing one's individualism. It will only help improve our society, right? And this every point of life, you see, our Hindu society was far better. But the thing is, people in in power today, both in government and in societies also, are not brave enough to adopt it, right?
Yes, yes,
Whenever there is
yes.
a debate about
That's what
polygamy,
Saju.
yeah,
Like
That is
basically,
you're absolutely right about your points, Saju. I would agree with you a couple of on your couple of points. Also, Raghav also made a very distinct, definitions of how freedom is suppressed and how one should prefer individualism. But that's where the actual distinguishing is supposed to be, because if we try to understand freedom in a misconceptualized way, we tend to evolve towards such a greater confusions instead of reaching a better lifestyle and better freedom. So I would like to use an example of Saju here. So Saju said, in India we have agreed to drive on the left side of the road, while collectively other parts of the world they've agreed to drive on the right side of the road. So freedom here, with this example, would be the most precise definition of freedom with the usage of this example would be, uh, if an individual wants to drive on the right side of the road, except for the times of overtaking, he could go to a ground, he could go to an empty ground or an empty place, and he could drive there where there is no traffic, so nobody can stop him. So that is individual freedom of preferring to drive on the right side but not on a public road. Yes.
Gagan,
So
I'm so sorry to interrupt. One
if
second, please.
if somebody goes and stops him while doing
Gagan,
that act on the ground, while he's doing on the ground, while he's trying to drive on the right side of the ground, if somebody tries to stop him, that would be obstructing his freedom. But if somebody
Gagan,
tries
can
to
you give
stop
me
him
one
while
second,
he's doing
please?
on the road, let me just conclude, Rose, because if this thing breaks off, it would not make sense. So if you could just
Okay,
give me 30 seconds, I would conclude. Yeah.
great, no
So if
problem.
that same individual is trying to drive on the left side of the road, and somebody tries to obstruct him, that is not obstruction of his freedom. That is following the rules of the nation and following the collective rules that everybody has agreed upon in order to stay safe on the road, in order to move in a better way without causing much confusion to others. Yes, Rose, please, you can take over and you can speak. Thank you for the
Yeah.
opportunity.
Thank you, Gagan. Actually, I've been seeing Gomateshwari raising her hand for a while. I'm not sure if you know that this is an unmoderated session. Whatever you have in mind, please unmute and just speak, as long as you're not cutting anybody off. Gomateshwari, just go ahead right now.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think Raghav sir said something about students asking permission to teachers to go to the restroom or to drink water at some point like that. And I think that it is good and it is correct because since teachers are very elder to us and the students are, very young, right from that age itself, the students must know to ask permission from the elders and obey them, so that right in front of them, if they're standing, the students must obey the teachers, and they should be grown in a disciplined way, because as the teacher is teaching, the student can't just leave the classroom and go to the restroom as they like. So I think it's important to teach students discipline, even in an indirect way. So yeah.
Thanks,
I think
Kumar. I wasn't
both is
actually.
very
I was making like a hyperbolic point when I said that telling when to go to bathroom and not to go to bathroom. I was saying I wasn't talking about them asking permission and being given permission. I was just saying, making a hyperbolic statement, saying that people tell you what to do at every step. Like they tell you when to breathe, when not to breathe. That kind of authoritarianism does exist in this country. There are people who take offense if you even slightly deviate from their instructions. There are people who are getting to that point of like authority without ever having that individual liberty, where they will feel suffocated if they did have that individuality exercise from an early stage in their life, and if somebody was doing that to them, they feel suffocated. But they never had that. They've always been happy to just obey instructions without questioning, and that's what leads to this kind of like a tyrannical authoritarianism that exists, and that was the point I was making. Another thing I want to quickly point out is the rules, the games, and all these things, right? Kabaddi, you're playing kabaddi, and then somebody's randomly running. First of all, when you participate in a game, you need to make sure that you're informed of the rules and you're obeying the rules. Otherwise, you're disqualified. Similar things apply to society. If you're living in a society, you need to make sure that you're following to the rules, and you have a protocol to bring a change to the rules if you have contention. That's what a good, very very good society will be structured in such a way that you have the room to protest against unfair laws, but you are required to follow the laws to be a part of the society. So I don't think that kind of comes into the ambit of this discussion, where we're talking about the individualism versus collectivism. Those are like more basic discussions, but yeah.
I liked what Gomateshwari said, but I don't exactly agree with the statement. I like
Next time
the
in the
people.
unmoderated session, no, limit everyone's time to 2 minutes.
As long as they are not taking excess time, it's fine. There is no time limit per se, 2 minutes or 1 minute. If it's exceeding 3 or 4 minutes, I will automatically just hop in and ask them to cut it short. Thank you, Saju.
Hello.
So
Yes,
should I continue?
Also,
I
Saju,
believe
please don't
Suri
cut
was
people
trying
off.
to say, yeah. 1 second. I think Suri was trying to say something. Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
please let him finish. Yeah.
Uh, okay, I lost trail of thought a little bit, but I think the point that Gomateshwari was making, like in terms of like developing the discipline and people following the elders, I think intent wise it is good, but the problem happens is, like, let's say while I was in the school, there were some very dogmatic ideas that I would not relate to, and I was not in agreement with those. And with that idea that you should just follow the elders and whatever they are saying is correct, I am bound to follow some of them, which would be, as a matter of fact, like some of my teachers were like quite old and they were coming from a different era. They were they followed the caste system and all, and they bifurcated people not as strongly as how you would see in the villages, but they did it. I did not like it. I did not follow it to the same extent, and it was not received so well. Uh, and then again, I'm not saying I'm like some elite and I had a better understanding or something. It was just individually, I did not like it. And they were not happy about it. So that makes it challenging to just say that whatever they are saying is correct. I think in general, the values are correct, but still, like, kids, I think at some point, Raghav did point out, like, they grow at different points and there is no point where like you kind of become like, whoa, you are learning all the time and you have different level of understanding over time. So it's very, it's very challenging to just say that whatever they are saying is correct. I think in general, it's good idea to be able to listen to them, understand it, and kind of consume the information. But just being blanket out and saying that no, you should listen to everything that you're saying, and you should only go to P when they allow you. What if I'm, and this has happened to one of the students in my class, where well, I was not the teacher, I was a student in that class. He wanted to be really bad. The teacher was not really happy. I think he was making the nuisance. He peed his pant in the class. Was that really a good situation? That student is still embarrassed to the day. Everybody makes fun of me, including me. But uh, the situation is that that shouldn't have happened, right?
Hello?
No, if
Yeah.
it's can I add a point? If it's really like an emergency, then it is compulsory for the teachers to, let them let them do it. I mean, let them go to the restroom. But if it's like, because some students, they'll just take it as an excuse to bunk as well. So yeah.
I
See, this is
agree. I
the this
think
is the this
that's
is the thing, between a individual versus a collective society, right? The point is that as an individualist society, you need to make sure that the responsibility of flourishing is on the hands of the individual. The student who's bunking, I believe that they should be given the freedom to bunk their class and go wherever they want, do whatever they want with their time, but they also need to take ownership of their responsibilities. And I know that, as a child, maybe they don't realize the gravity of it, but if you emphasize on an individualist society, right, you will emphasize more on educating every child about the merits of, like, taking ownership of their decisions and doing that. That's actually what individualism emphasizes. You start by learning the power of your own agency, and you start exercising your freedom with more responsibility. And I think that is what you lose at a as a collective society. We don't emphasize enough on that individual understanding of what their freedom means to them. So that's where the problem is. And I think in India we definitely don't educate our kids about the power of their own freedom, or the responsibility of making decisions on their own, because they're not given the opportunity to make decisions. So definitely, the people who are not capable of, like, withstanding that level of authoritarianism will never find any meaning in doing any of those things. So they will, like, blatantly disregard the rules. They will do anything that they want, because they physically cannot imagine being themselves in that situation where they're just doing what they're told. Okay, so that is a problem, and I think we need to bring some balance, because we're way too collectivist as a society. We need to bring it more towards an individualistic focus, where children are given the education about their responsibilities.
So I
Yeah, I
think
agreed with Raghav on this.
I would like to mention that the points you just said, Raghav, we need to bring society into more individualistic approach in terms of children. So the very important point there would be to what degree it needs to be done, because as you said, some of the points that are extremely aggravated, where individualism is being when it is being extremely suppressed. If we try to do that, that would make sense. Whereas I would not agree on the points where you said, a kid should be provided his own freedom in order to bunk, and we need to teach to own for himself, because mainly because of the answer that you also provided, because he won't be having that much um, ability or thoughtfulness for him to decide for himself at a very young age. So I don't think there would be a problem if we try to rectify and mold at during that age. So but whereas other points that you mentioned, where individualism was suppressed excessively, there if we try to work on individualism, it is a wonderful thing. But I would not totally agree to your points, where every area of individualism needs to be approached in schooling. So that's where I would disagree with your points.
No, I
No,
think
no,
it's
I
fair.
will tell you,
This,
Raghav, let me help you, no? Let me help you. So, if a student is bunking a class, what is it
Mhm.
trying to do, right? It is a means of protest. He doesn't like the class. It doesn't make sense to him. Now you are bringing in a rule of discipline wherein he is forced to sit in the class, right? And he doesn't even care what is being taught, right? So that feedback has to go to the school authority that this particular fellow individual finds the class very boring. And if you take a survey of the kids today, I am pretty sure there'll be at least 25% of the kids who find their studies very, very boring, right? Isn't that a feedback for the education system? But for years together, this particular feedback has been suppressed, right? It is the person bunking the class is bunking it because he finds the class boring, not that he has got better things to do outside, right?
No, that's not always the case. I think some people do have better things to do outside. I mean, these things are comparative, right? See, we're always making some choices in terms of like what we want to spend the time on, and that depends on like what options you have. If outside you have a better option of playing video games and it's more entertaining to you, you're going to pick that. It's not because the class is boring; it's because you find that one, that activity more entertaining. So you will go do that. See, my point of like bringing that about was that we need to bring a structure where we organize our society in such a way that we emphasize on the power of individual decisions and ownership of responsibilities to the individual. And by making that change, we will also have to make sure that the infrastructure around everything also favors that. So, for example, in the case of education system, right now we don't have any individual freedom for anybody. Even the college students, they don't have any freedom. They don't even have the freedom to pick their major. All of them are doing things in terms of market demand. They don't know what to want, first of all. Okay, so that whole thing is fostered because they never had the chance to exercise their freedom. Now, if you bring about a kind of like a framework where you tell them, okay, in the next 5 years, where you end up depends on how much progress you make on these dimensions. So these are your goals, and you need to go and exercise these, and you figure out how to best spend your time to achieve these targets. So if you give this responsibility to the child, and no matter what they do, like whether they spend time playing video games or attending class or whatever, they will know that it is their responsibility to meet these targets. Okay, so as long as they meet the targets, and as long as we set those targets in accordance to their freedom, we will not see an incidence of like this happening where people are being forced to do what they don't want to do, or people failing their targets because they didn't do what they want to do. So because they didn't want to do what was necessary. Because like if you keep emphasizing from a very young age that these are your objectives, and if you want to participate in the school, you have to do these things, and you have to achieve these targets by this time, and then you give them the freedom of their personal liberty, then you will see that these young kids will start developing their agency from a very young age. They will start making decisions. They will start planning their time on their own, depending on what works for them. Not everything has to be top down. Not everything works for everybody. And by giving the children the space to make their own
2
decisions,
minutes are up.
you are empowering them to be better children. Yeah, but one more thing is that the moment
Yes, yes,
but one thing that we
Just me or
see is
Raghav, your
basically
voice
living
is
with
pretty
children is
unclear.
what I'm trying to avoid. Yeah.
Your voice is pretty unclear, Raghav.
Okay, is it clear now?
It's a bit better.
Is it just for Rose or is it for everybody else? Was it unclear?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Everyone.
it's for everyone. Yeah. Most
Okay.
part it was clear. For the last 2-3 lines, it
Yeah.
wasn't very clear.
Okay, sorry about that, but I think I made my point. I was just saying, I think I made my point. You guys got it, right? Was it something
Okay.
unclear?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Raghav, I
Raghav,
just
but
want to
whatever
supplement.
you're saying is untested, okay? Nobody knows whether it's a success.
Guys, I think Madan and Gomateshwari have been trying to speak for a long time. I think I'll let them go. Go ahead. Madan, you can speak, and then Gomateshwari, you can follow, and everybody else, you guys can just go ahead as usual after them.
Thank you, Rose. What I was trying to say is in a society, we need individuals who can think and act differently, can think on their own. And say if 100 guys agree with what is being said or what is being taught in a classroom, we need that one guy who raises a hand and says, no, I don't disagree with this, or I'm not interested in this subject. And he should be given the freedom to pursue what he wants. Like if he's interested in video games, should be interested in pursuing a career in gaming and animation for that matter. So have we created such a scope for such a thing for gaming and animation, or are there courses being taught in the school? So the education system needs to be changed to facilitate such individuals. And even the education system, who thought of changing the education system? It was introduced to us Indians by the Westerners, by the British, and we just blindly accepted it without questioning the status quo. So how many did think of changing that? What if we introduced a new skill-based education system rather? For example, for sports, you have a separate, you complete a certain level of training, you get a degree-like certificate. Say we can have such many changes which can contribute in a positive ways. And also in IT, if you see, we don't innovate any new products. We are only being service providers to those Western products, and they are utilizing our good talent. Why didn't we think about coming up with our own products and innovation? We don't innovate. We don't like to think differently as Indians. So we need individuals who can ask such questions, which would bring about a change in the society. We are a diverse, multicultural country, India. We have all the talent and resources here. So why should we contribute in developing our talent towards somebody else's economy? Why should we contribute our talent towards somebody else? What if we contribute the same talent here in bringing about a change to our system, to our education system, and let us set an example to the West? Let us develop a new education system and to tell the world this is how it has to be done. We need such individuals who can think differently and act differently. And these individuals which can bring about a positive change in the society should be encouraged and given room to develop their own ideas and execute them. So that's so we need such individuals. As long as they bring positive change in the society, they should be welcome and supported, get the support and help they deserve to. Thank you.
So yeah, something should be like encouraged in the minds of children, because since they feel bored only, they feel they have the feeling to bunk. Actually, bunking is somewhat misguiding the children, because at the young age they will not know which is right and which is wrong. Just because our parents guided us, we are in good position now, because if they had encouraged to bunk classes, I don't know in which position we all would have been now. So bunking is a misguiding step for the children, uh, because even if they feel bored, maybe the classes can be more practical and more engaging. Because if people think that bunking is a step towards individualistic approach or freedom, I know many students from my own school batch, or even my juniors and seniors who have finished 12th standard, and after finishing 12th, they have, they developed a sense of individualism. A wrong individualism, and they have started to go to pubs and some bad places. And if we think that it's their freedom to go and they enjoy it since they feel colleges are bored, this is not individualism is. So freedom is different, and allowing children to bunk is different. So providing freedom in the towards the right path and towards the right approach is the correct step. So to make children to feel very individualistic, or to provide them freedom, there should be moral science classes that must be emphasized and given more importance in schools. Because even several schools, they skip the moral science classes, or they don't even have these moral science classes which incorporate the moral principles and good habits in the mind of people. So yeah, that's it. If the children are feeling bored, they can the teachers can be told to take more practical based classes. Like for example, this chemistry, physics and all the concepts will be so good if they are going to do it practically in class. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I would like to
Being
continue
the
on that Prometeshwari's argument. Like, she made a good point with regards to that. Bunking is one thing, like people were defending it, bunking in the form of, in the guise of individual freedom. Can we in the same way defend underage drinking? Can we in the same way defend underage narcotic use and all other ill practices, especially for the young people, especially for the young students? They are more vulnerable in this day and age. It is very difficult to not get trapped into the advertisement and the dopamine rush, which is instantly provided for children and students throughout their mobiles and video games and etc. So it's very hard for them to understand what exactly is valuable at that age and period. And as she mentioned, that it's about directing us towards the right freedom. That's what actually gives us an enriching experience of what freedom is. For that, we need to understand what is good and bad. And young people often don't have that and don't have that moral compass, and it needs to be inculcated. It needs to be inculcated in an early age. That is why disciplining is important. That is why we have uniforms in school. It makes you uniform in that regard, because we are fundamentally chaotic. Fundamentally, humans, if left alone, are chaotic. We are not like fundamentally wired to sit and study. We are fundamentally wired to seek as much pleasure as we want. That's what we fundamentally are. So we have to rewire from an early age to in the correct direct have a good moral compass. That is what I'm been arguing about the whole session, that we need a moral compass that lays the foundation of what is good and bad, and then incentivize the individual to seek your own good and bad, and then adequately reward them and punish them. That's what, the more you align with the society's definition of good, more you will be rewarded in terms of money, in the terms of societal acceptance and prestige, etc. The more you stray away from, you have to be punished. And it's a harsh reality. People have sometimes it also suppresses the innovation. But to foster that individual freedom and individual innovation, that to accommodate that chaos, we need to have a good foundational regulatory or a regulatory framework or moral compass at the base. So I believe our individual freedom should end not at someone else's nose, but it should end when it challenges the fundamental notions of good and bad. And I believe in our society that is being challenged through advertisements, through mass media, pop culture, and increasingly young people particularly are getting strayed, and young people are finding themselves lost in this pursuit of enjoying greater freedom or whatever. So I believe that's a big problem.
Yeah,
Being a
I
student,
think the
I'll
previous
just put
speakers made
forth
a
my
very good point.
I'll just put
May I
forth
go
my
ahead?
perspective that Sanath, can you go after? Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Prince.
But
I think the previous speakers, they made a very good point when they said that like the the things that should be prohibited, they're not like just the things that will be causing harm to your person in the face. Well, those are the obvious candidates, but then there are also the actions that a person does, which like it's going to the continuation of these actions, it will lead to the accumulation of bad effects in society. Even these kinds of activities should be prescribed. The one good example of this one would be like drug use. The prevalent culture, a very popular attitude nowadays is like, if a person is going to like consume drugs, who is he harming? He's just harming himself and nobody else around him. So like people should be allowed to make choices, and people should be allowed to face the consequence of their choices. And that is what freedom means. Is the it's a very popular conception nowadays, but the question I would ask is like, for a given person, like well, there are whole segments of the society who would fall into this drug trap and ruin their lives, and they would be making bad choices and facing the bad consequences of their action. But the most unfortunate thing will be that the people who do not make bad choices, people who do not choose to consume drugs, but to lead like a more sane life, even they will be affected by the bad choices of other people, and the freedom of the people who made the good choices, their freedoms will be encroached upon by the bad choices uh, you know, made by the other people exercising their freedom. So that is why there's got to be like the things that are prescribed. Those have to be like those have to come under the larger definition of things which are good for the larger society over the long run too, and not just the things that are like that are that are bad that a person does, which causes immediate harm. So we should. This is my idea of how the morals should be, and also in many cases, the laws of the country too should be. Yes.
Yeah. So being a student myself, I'll just like to add that bunking is a coping mechanism. First of all, what is the practicality of these classes? Is this the fault of an individual that there is just theoretical concepts and no practicality that's being taught in the class, and a system, an education system that was built by society itself? Secondly, people looks at the consequences and the gains that they are going to get out of the classes. What does a consistent and obedient student get out of attending classes like day in and day out? People get education for two reasons. Firstly is knowledge. I guess all of us know what kind of knowledge is instilled in the education system. Secondly is job. At the situation where Indian youth is closing on 90% literacy rate, let me reinstate Indian youth, and we are seeing a situation where people of IIT Bombays are not getting placed. The average median salary of Indian household is merely 1.8 lakh per household. What kind of gratification does that give to the students? On the other side, what are the consequences of bunking a class? At least they are going to get practical knowledge and the street genius thing that they are going to get. And there is practically no other consequences, because the things that are taught throughout a semester, a student can learn by simply putting an all-nighter one day before an examination and getting like an above average marks. Additionally, I won't rant much on the education system. Uh, Someone said that there should be moral education classes provided to students. What kind of world are we then going to create when we are going to teach those theoretical Kantian ethics to these students, and more than half of which are not even applicable? We don't live in an utopian world. There are chaos in this society, and if we have to go by this Kantian ideology, then I'm afraid the humanity will be dead. So the best way of getting to know what's right or what's wrong is through these experiments that these individualists do. And they, of course, maybe 80 or 90% of these experiments fail, but those 10% are going to add great value to the society and the whole state as a whole.
Thanks, Prince.
What you say,
I love what
just
Prince
one
has said.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Just
Go
one
ahead, Samarth.
suggestion. Like, instead of running these experiments on the whole of the society, and then essentially treating the society as a whole as a guinea pig, can these experiments be run on like willing participants, so that based on their results, like these, the larger society can adopt or reject the results of these experiments?
Samarth, I think what the Prince was talking about is an experiment on an individual. Like the scope of your experiment is isolated to you. You as an individual, you experiment and you figure out the issues, and as a result of that, the entire society will benefit. If 10% of the people who are experimenting on their own time and their own freedom, if they reap the benefits, then the entire society reaps the benefit. Actually, I want to go back to what Madan was talking about. Okay, Madan was talking about how we are we are a service-oriented country. Even the IT industry is mostly these are like low-level laborers, intellectual laborers for other people with agency, with the creativity to perform their tasks. Majority of the IT workers in India, they're just it's almost like a sweatshop. What they're doing doesn't require any kind of creative output or anything. They just following somebody else's creative vision, and they're enforcing or executing that product, and that is the result of a collectivist society. You don't have enough individuals who have had the agency and life experience to actually go and do something creative or innovative. The only people who can succeed in the entrepreneurial space, the space of leadership and creative agency, are the people who had the time and life experience exercising those skills. And that is what an individualist society promotes. It promotes a space for you to exercise your agency, exercise your creative potential, make mistakes, learn from it, experiment, learn from it, and then you become somebody who becomes adept at those things. you start making like a lot fewer errors than you started out as. So when you give this freedom to the children, you actually like enforce that their ability to do these things, and thereby as a society you reap the benefits of that. Maybe 20 years down the line, this child will actually have the agency to make those products that actually stand out. I mean, imagine like Elon Musk following these kind of like same rules that he was following as a child, that we children here follow. And imagine him just like becoming the
Okay,
most
2
success he
minutes
can
are up.
see. Yeah, but the most success you can see as a collectivist society are basically high functioning, mediocre individuals. So individualism is the basis for excellence, human excellence.
See, I think there was a topic that Raghav had debated, I think 3 weeks back, that about capitalism, about that. So that is a different debate in itself. There is an environment that is provided by the society that benefits the individual immensely. For example, traveling from one place to the other via a mechanical contraption called the metro can happen only in a society. An individual cannot do it. We have to agree on that. But you have to know that the individual is the beneficiary here, and the benefit given to that individual is the freedom of movement. Right? The society works towards giving greater freedom to the individual. That is the intent of the society. Right? There are societies in West and many places wherein you can open a tap and drink water from it. Right? Why is that freedom given? That freedom is given because if you are an individual living in the mountain somewhere, you can drink from the river. Right? So the idea of a society is towards giving greater freedom to the individual. Right? So we have to, but because of the way our society, Indian society is constructed, it is hierarchical. And all these innovations that we are talking about is happened in the West and did not happen in our society, because we are still a 70-year-old country, which is considered young. US is like probably 200 years. How much? It will be 100 years probably that it's free. Right? So it is not a fair comparison to do that. We are getting there. Right? When Aadhaar was introduced by Congress long back, people did not even know what it is, and it was not such a hahulla that it is such a great thing and all those things, because they did it in that way. Right? So slowly technical innovations are happening, and there is a market that is growing in India, and it will happen regardless of governments. It will happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like making a comparison here. I'm just placing the precursors for that to happen is basically individualism. I'm not comparing with our country with another country or whatever. I think that we will achieve more success if we promote individualism. That's the whole point of this discussion. And I'm basically setting the precedent for that change to happen on a society-wide basis. And that starts with us talking about the benefits of it. Because like India is a country where you have to talk about the benefits of what is lacking here. What is lacking in the society is individualism, not collectivism. Collectivism is like everybody is born with it. They're kind of like soaking in it. Okay, so there's no need to advocate for it. I think that we all realize the benefits of the balance, but I think the emphasis should be on the individual excellence, and yeah, that's where I'm coming from on this.
No, you are right about that. Somebody mentioned it. That's why I tried to. But see, for example, somebody was talking about the kid who always bunks classes. Now there are many schools, many organizations that thought about this and said, let us address this problem, and they have brought in gamification of learning. Right? Why did they think about that? Because they know it is a problem. But this problem has come into the come into the eyes of our education system long back. Long back, people used to bunk classes, and nobody asked the question, why is he bunking classes? Right? They all thought he's a rude kid and he can bunk. In fact, Raghav, I'm telling you, today's bipartisan kind of thing that is happening in India is because there are many people who do not want to study in the way it is being taught, but yet they are forced to, because in the name of society and rules and uniformity and all that, this kind of things have been brought in. right? If a student is not interested in a class, nobody thought of a system wherein you can say, okay, that student is not interested in that subject, let us provide him another option. Nobody thought like that. It is always science, physics, right? There are many schools all over the world who does not force the kids to take 5 kg of study material on their back and go sit in a class for 8 hours. I mean, we don't do it in our professional life. Why would you force a student to do it? Anyways, yeah, I'm just ranting here.
No, actually, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So see, the thing is that you're talking about like how in a professional environment they're not expected to. Actually, they are. If you go look at like how most Indian companies are structured themselves, it's almost like a continuation of the school environment. You're supposed to come in
Exactly.
and then follow. You're just sitting there and waiting for orders and doing those things. That's exactly what you're trained for. For 20 years of your educational career, you're being trained to sit down, shut up, and follow instructions, and be obedient, and put your head down, and not express any kind of individualism. If you stand out, you're grilled for it, and you're punished for it. So I'm just saying that the way we have conditioned our children, that is how your adults are going to behave. And most adults in this country are basically children in adult bodies, because they have never really taken any chance to exercise their freedom or agency or thinking abilities. A lot of like what you see on social media, even it's basically just people who are just blindly following the information that they're presented to. They have not developed their critical thinking faculties simply because they've not had the chance to do it since a young age. So these personal evolution problems will only be solved if you allow greater freedom from a very young age, which was the whole crux of my presentation or my argument about this topic.
If young children go out of school and bunk, they feel very safe? School is a very safer place when compared to some random place to go and bunk and learn something. So school, it provides a kind of safety and security to the young children, because there are several kind of
See,
abuses as well that is happening in the society, child abuse, or even kidnapping,
sure,
many
yeah.
things.
No,
Young children,
I think
yeah, go ahead.
no, I think you misunderstood what I'm saying to me advocating or encouraging students to bunk or something. That was never the argument. I think you made that argument, but I didn't have a chance to debunk your statement. Basically, I'm not trying to advocate for kids bunking their class or whatever, but in a certain way, right? Like when they make these decisions to defy the overarching rule or whatever, there is a price that they have to pay for defying the rules, right? There is an incentive that they have to sort of like do it in a way that they don't get caught. Even that, right? Even that actually like promotes their ability to take ownership and take a risk, because like life is like that. You have to take risk. You have to do those things. And in my opinion, actually, I would argue that somebody who's taking the initiative to go and bunk their class and not get caught and get by, they will probably have like better chance of success in the real world than somebody who's just sitting there and following instructions
I was
blindly.
going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, so because like actually, if you look at the unemployment rate, right, the unemployment rate is the highest among the people who are the most educated. The people who are dropouts from school, they have no problems going and finding jobs. I don't know if you guys know this. So there are
No,
people.
that is a different problem.
No,
The
the reason why I'm
statistics
saying
captured is only for employment and
no,
educated people.
the reason why I'm saying this, even if you disregard those statistics, right, you can actually see that the people who have kind of like dropped out from the school environment, they actually are more sensible. You can actually talk to them. You can actually reason with them. Because they've had sufficient life experience to reason back with you. Even if they're not educated, even if they're not really well spoken or whatever, they will still know enough to like make decisions, and that because that is required for their survival. But in a school environment, right, you can go dormant without exercising your agency, without exercising your reasoning skills for a very long time, and you will still come out as an excellent student or a meritorious person.
Agreed with you
I know.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like actually, there is a more nuanced argument that should be made about the structure of the education system in this regard, because it doesn't that kind of deviates from the main central topic of today's session, basically that individualism versus collectivism, right? The school structure massively promotes collectivism. You are meant to listen and just obey regardless of what you feel or how you feel. And I agree with what you're saying about like how the society has become unsafe for students, and if they bunk the class, they actually get more susceptible to these crimes attacking children, crimes targeting children, right? So that is absolutely true, but that is like an exception, like there's an exceptional circumstance that is being caused by something completely different from what we are talking about. There is a parallel issue going on of like how unsafe society is becoming. But the primary incentive for bunking is basically that you're taking an ownership of your decision and taking the time to go and do things. And in my opinion, actually, I would support that if the child is like being exercising caution and exercising their intelligence and discretion. Actually, I think it will benefit them overall. I'm pretty sure, like Gomatis, you don't agree with this, but this is just from what I've seen. People who have the courage to take that risk and do those things, they will definitely be benefited in their life because of those. But I guess I've taken a lot of time. I want to hear from others as well. Like, I think we've gone to like, what is this? Like 11 to 12, 3 hours, right? 3 hours. So I don't know if you guys have had lunch or whatever, but
I just have one more point to make.
Sure.
By the way, now we have online classes. So even if a student bunks, he can listen to the lectures whenever he wants. That's what I wanted to make.
Sure. I think we are
like that is a different problem. Yeah.
No, we are collectively moving towards like greater individual freedom, because like imagine what our parents were going through. They had like zero freedom. Like it's a like we are slowly inching closer and closer towards like kids having greater freedom, and the parents are looking at the kids and going like they're surprised at the amount of freedom that they have. But actually, we are still slowly progressing to a point where we need to get. It's not a degradation. It's actually like a better thing that's happening, that kids have more freedom these days. And I'm really happy that internet has evolved and technology has evolved to the point where individuals can have that freedom, because it inevitably, like the next generation of Indian population will be much better at entrepreneurial adventures and making like creative innovation, all that things. It's primarily because of how they're raised. That is the precursor to an innovative generation in society.
The others have left. Many of them have left the debate, actually.
Of course, man. I think this whole session was meant to be an hour and a half plus an unmoderated session, but I think.
Yeah, Raghav, I'm telling you, the less the number it is, the more fruitful the debate will be.
See, but okay, I want to touch upon this as well, because yesterday there was a discussion about this, like how are we going to manage more people joining and all that stuff. I think see, we have to understand that the whole intention of this club, right? It is actually to bring in a larger section of the population to this form of like nuanced conversations. We are, as a small group of people, we are benefiting from this. But my objective in this debate club is basically to create a society where everybody has the faculty to reason and to present themselves, and that will only happen if they're given the opportunity to speak. You have to take this privilege to everybody. Otherwise, I don't see. I'm doing this as a very selfish thing. Okay, don't think that I'm being selfless in doing this. My selfish reason is that I want to live in a society where everybody has agency and everybody's exercising their critical reasoning skills and everything. I don't care how much you disagree with me, but I want to make sure that you are capable of discerning and making your own mind up. Otherwise, living in a democracy full of like people who don't have the faculty for reasoning and self leadership, it's a dangerous, it's a ticking time bomb basically. So I want to avoid that. I want to make sure that everybody is having the opportunity to evolve their narrative, and that's the whole reason of the debate club being here. I'm doing it for our own, like everybody's benefit, including mine. And that'll only happen if we expand and we include everybody in this whole process. So that's the reason why we are scaling up. And I do agree that there is a certain price to pay for individual participation, liberty, when the things scale up. But that's up to me. I'm doing this as an entrepreneur. Okay, so I'm trying to build a business out of this. Eventually, it'll happen. Where everybody gets to profit from this, as well as the organization itself kind of flourishes. And it's up to me to like sort of scale it up without compromising on individual participation. So we will get there. But yeah, I don't want to limit it to a small group. This is not a.
Do you want to make it
Yeah.
kind of a social media kind of stuff where we write down stuff and you link things together with all, I mean, facts and figures presented, connected to videos and stuff like that?
That would be nice, but with the debate club, right? I'm just trying to create an opportunity for everybody to basically just come and voice themselves. Okay, so that doesn't require like extensive documenting and like linking and all these things. There are other things that we can do to achieve that. For the debate club, my primary thing is that everybody should have a voice. Okay, like because like majority of the Indian people, we are just like recipients of like conversations happening outside of their control. Whether if you turn on your TV or if you go to YouTube, you're watching and you're receiving information, but you'll never have the chance to speak. And I want to bring that right to speak, right to voice yourself to everybody in this country, because unless they have that, right, they will never evolve in their reasoning. So I want to give that, but I think we already have enough platforms to do the text-based expression, right? Like everybody's you can go to Reddit and have detailed conversations there. But I think that is like already saturated. I want to bring it to the voice-based expression.
Yeah, but voice thing, if somebody debates once, like let's say we have 3 hours of debate, nobody's going to go through the 3 hours of recording. I mean, to
No,
see again.
Again, that's not the point. See, you stuck with us for 3 hours, right? That is the point. I don't want to, because like whatever amount of content that we create and put on YouTube, right? That's still going to be like an ocean of high quality content that people can anyway consume. So what I'm saying is, you and I, like you, Madan, Prince, you guys are still here talking, right? That is what I want to bring to the rest of the country, the ability to speak rather than to sit and listen.
Okay, understood.
Okay, looks like nobody has anything else to say. If you guys want to say something more, we can. Otherwise,
one more thing.
Yeah.
Even if you
Sure, go
debate,
ahead.
let's say the people, the decision makers, if they don't listen to us, I mean, it doesn't have an impact on the society. You know what I mean?
It starts here. Okay, it's not like revolution happens and it's instantaneous. Revolution happens step by step. It happens through time. Okay, you have to do something consistently for a long period of time for it to change. See, there is no way in which you have like a society full of evolved individuals. They have the right to reason and they're exercising their right to think for themselves and all these things. And you still end up in a point where like we're all suppressed by the decision makers for inability to comprehend our requests or requirements in an intelligent way. That's not going to happen. We are going to get there for sure, but we have to start here, where we are talking, we have clarity to ourselves. And if this happens in large number, right, the demand of the people will change, and there's no way that somebody in power can ignore that. They will succumb. They will buckle down to it. But the first thing is that you need to make sure that the larger society stays on the same side, and we all have a pro-nuanced conversation attitude, where we are not like blindly following, like pledging allegiance to various entities. That's what's happening right now in society. That people are just they're loyalists. They're not critical reasoners. They're just loyalists. They will say that since my grandfather, I've been loyal to this political party, and they say it with so much pride in their hearts. They think that they're basically meant to be a fan. The highest achievement is being a fan to a certain political entity or something like that. And we have to like bring a certain level of evolution in that person's narrative. They'll only exercise this when they start speaking and when they start reasoning and they get countered respectfully. Okay, that space is very nuanced. Right now, we don't have any space where you can go and express yourself and be treated respectfully. And I want to bring that privilege to everybody. That's the intent behind the debate club.
And the biggest positive that, for me, according to me, debate club has had is people have got some level of tolerance, because in a lot of debates, several people or speakers do agree to disagree. And the bestest of friends I have made in the debate club are the people with whom I disagree like 90% of the time in the debate. So that kind of acceptance has, kind of led to a higher level of tolerance in the nation.
Yeah.
or
I
at
think,
least the
yeah.
community that we have.
Yeah, imagine like everybody willing to listen to each other, first of all. That itself is an achievement. And you are not going to achieve a certain level of societal harmony without emphasizing on individual, growth or individual evolution and all that. So yeah, I think I made my point pretty clear. I think, Ashwin, do you understand now, or do you agree with me?
Yeah, but basically my idea is to have both voice and text integrated together. That was my idea because I'm a computer science student.
Mhm.
And this is my idea. See, if you have only voice, what if 200 or 2000 people join? Then what are you going to do? How are you going to manage?
Right.
That is the
Right.
question.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I think we will like enforce certain limits. That will actually create some certain competition in the participation, and there are ways to do it sustainably. That's one of the challenges that I'm taking up as I'm also from the tech background, and I'm designing this platform, and I'll be sharing the prototype within the next month or something like that, where we'll go through.
Let's say if some people present something to you, let's say some
Mhm.
points, you can sum them up together. I mean, remove the duplications and redundancies. You can present it, and based on that, you can select the participants who can speak, right?
Yeah. You know what?
Something like
One of the ideas that I have is actually is for you to participate. First, you have to present your ideas in a text format.
That is what I said. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that we're already working on that. So once you do that, only then you get to speak. Otherwise, you're a spectator. If you don't have anything to say to start with, then you're just a spectator. So you have to join the call by posting a certain text, like summary of like what your stance is, and that qualifies you to be one of the other sides. And there are also different formats of discussions. Right now, what we're having is more of an open format, open participation uh, format where anybody can come and speak regardless of their stance. We can have like more formal debate, competitive debate structures where people will form teams depending on their stances, and then like there'll be a certain verdict at the end. So there are like many different ideas floating around. We will do this, and also it's not like the whole thing is going to be online. We are actually also trying to figure out how to sustainably conduct offline events. Imagine, right? Like it's not like just the English speaking people who are capable of doing this. We also want to have like sessions that are in regional languages, local Indian languages, where people can have the debate entirely on that format, on that language, following the similar format. So unless you do all these things, right, you're not going to include people. And if you only allow, I mean, like of course, like I'm not saying you're advocating for this, but one of the disadvantages for like text-based discussions is that you have to be literate. But it's not a requirement for you to be literate for you to participate in any kind of like discussion and evolve your own narrative. There are so many people who find it uncomfortable to write and read, who are good at reasoning. Okay, so we want to bring them also into the fold. So that'll only happen if we emphasize the voice aspect. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, done. I understood.
Yeah. So I think we have reached a certain point where we can conclude here. Thank you so much for each of you to join, and hope to see you guys again next time.
See you
Thank you,
guys.
Raghav.
Thank you. Bye.